Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the second part of What If Deku Was Death's Favorite Child? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku. Izuku agitatedly loosens his tie, half tempted to just chuck it off. He doesn't and has never learned how to fix the knots, and no one at Genjutsu cared about uniforms or conduct. Considering it was a school where every student is another's punching bag, every smile is chock full of malice and chipped teeth, and every blazer's been flecked with blood, how could they give a damn about something as inconsequential as the fit of a tie or a few undone shirt buttons? That looks fucking terrible, Dabi tells him unhelpfully, leaning against the doorframe, nursing a cup of tea. Izuku flips him off, still attempting to make his tie look somewhat decent in the shattered mirror. Sorry, my daddy never really taught me how to do this, he drawls sarcastically. Why the fuck are ties a part of uniforms anyway? Am I dressing up for a fucking business deal? Order and shit? Dabi suggests, unsure. I dropped out of school when I ran away, Zoo. I haven't worn a uniform in like 7 fucking years. Do you remember how to tie a tie at least? Dabi stares, long and hard at the mess of something on Izuku's chest, and relents, out of pity if anything. No promises it'll look good. Anything is better than this shit. Dabi's attempt was much better than his. Dabi's father, or as Dabi refers to him kindly, the fucking monster who happened to put his seed in Dabi's giver of birth, stressed the importance of appearance and reputation, and though Dabi hasn't been around the dickhead in ages, he still remembers how to fix the damn knot. Dabi recounted the story of his first piercing, a standard lobe he'd done himself. His father had yanked it out and cut open his ear. Dabi's response was to cauterize the wound and give himself another 4. His right lobe still has the tear. It isn't funny. To remember a time in your life when you were left bruising, crying, and scared isn't funny. But Izuku laughed because Dabi talked about the way his father walked like he had crabs in his pants. Izuku will continue to laugh because the world is cruel, and laughing feels like the biggest fuck you to all the shitty things they've been through. He's spiteful like that. Still, Izuku struggles with feeling things snug around his neck squeezing, purple, blue blossoming veins, and so he'd loosen the knot the best he could without undoing it. The only thing that can sit around his throat is the pendant he wore for his mother. The rope was still like a noose, but this noose was hers, all of it was her, and he refuses to forget so. People stare at him as he waits by the gate. It isn't unusual. People's eyes always seem to find him, like he's some sort of amusing, carnival attraction to be gawked at. He gets it, with his uniform sleeves rolled up to his elbows and his blazer tied around his waist. The bandages on his arms are on full display along with the rest of himself. The rest of himself: scars, dirt, piercings, hair. His hair, styled like hers, but her hair was straight and pretty and fell around her shoulders like gentle water. Izuku's hair sits on his head like a cloud, 1,000 curls, messy and untamable, and is never just right. Will he ever escape her? Will he ever? Still, they shouldn't stare. He hates that they're staring. It's uncomfortable. Izuku looks down, pulling out his phone as the stares start to feel like nails across his skin. XX. Electric Boy. Cammy, I will leave. Where are you? I am here, ISTG, I am looking for you. Izuku looks up and catches the head of dark blonde hair scurrying around, only a few paces ahead of him. XX. Electric Boy. I'm across from you, dumbass. Kaminari snaps his head up and notices Izuku leaning against a pillar, dull eyes glittering amusedly. He beams and jogs over. Izuku catches a few pins latched onto his uniform, little lightning bolts, characters from old animation films he's seen with Akatani, a small bi and genderqueer flag. Cute pins, he says, as opposed to a greeting. Kaminari flushes, cherry cheeks pulling into a more embarrassed smile. You think? He brushes his fingers against the genderqueer flag. I'm afraid of how people will react. Do you think it's even allowed? I was worried that it wasn't, but I hate not wearing them and I would have pinned them to my bag, but I already have a bunch of pins. Kaminari points to his shoulder bag enthusiastically. See, I have another by flag, he/him's pronoun one and, shit, I just realized. I never asked. Kaminari looks away from his bag and to Izuku, eyes alight. What are your pronouns? I assumed heej, but you do look pretty androgynous and looks don't mean anything when it comes to pronouns or gender identity. He stops his tangent and looks at Izuku expectantly. Izuku's lips quirk. He's like an energized puppy. It's precious. Izuku starts walking to the building, Kaminari in tow, still looking up at him. A few seconds pass before Izuku answers. The pins should be fine. As for my pronouns, I don't really care, but he/him's works. It's what I'm used to. Cool. What class are you going to, by the way? I know you said Gen Ed, but which section? 1C. I'm 1A. Kaminari makes a fist with his hand. I'm kinda nervous actually. Like, what if they don't like me? Actually, one of the dudes from the exam, the redhead who helped us when you passed out. I'll have you tail 1A. Izuku lets Kaminari talk, tangent after tangent, word vomit of messy and uncoordinated thoughts that are difficult to follow. Kaminari talks with his hands, enthusiastic and upbeat, all jumpy and expressive. Sometimes he'll catch himself and shrink, almost as if embarrassed. Izuku understands that, talking with stars in your eyes only to be yelled at for being too loud and too much and too noisy. Being told to stop. You shine too brightly, Zuzukin. That's why the world wants to keep you quiet. Izuku asks a question whenever that happens, and Kaminari lights up all over again. It's a little sad. Kaminari talks and all Izuku does is listen. That should be the way it works. Then there was this weird bird and the classroom. Kaminari widens his eyes, facing the large door. He turns to Izuku apologetically. I'm so sorry. I kept you away from your class and now you're going to be late on your first day. You could have just told me you were headed a different way. If you want, I can ask whoever my homeroom teacher is to write you a slip so you won't get into trouble for dropping me off. Izuku waves his hand dismissively. I'm coming with you, Cam. Kaminari's distress melts way to confusion. You are? Didn't you say you were in 1C? I am. Izuku ties his jacket around his waist. Remember I told you there were conditions I have to meet for my request to go through? Oh yeah, I remember. Kaminari nods. So the condition is what? Joining both 1A and 1C? Not quite. Shota Aizawa's sleeping bag is his haven. Life is unfair, an indisputable fact. If there is a God, they are not benevolent. There is abuse, hate, discrimination. There is an ugly truth about humanity that God has injected into the blood of their creations, and so Shota cannot call them benevolent. Day in and day out, Shota fights gory battles, fights for children who cry, fights for the women hiding in back alleys, fights for the men left penniless by power-hungry bastards. Day in and day out, Shota fights. His sleeping bag is his haven, his own little world of warped reality. To him, the flimsy, piss-yellow material wards away devils. In that little bag, in his cocoon, no one can touch him. He is no longer real, no longer a person who breathes and walks and eats and lives. In that little bag, he is alone, truly friends with the nothingness. Not with his thoughts or the voices of people long since gone, but true nothingness. It's bliss. Shota loves his sleeping bag. He carries it anywhere and everywhere he can. With it he hides. He pretends no harm can come if he holds onto the material a little tighter. As he lays on the floor, his students swarming in, nervous and excited for their first day in Yui's hero course, sleeping bag drawn, he pretends, for those few seconds, that there is nothingness. He forgets who he is, forgets his naivety, his faults. He forgets the dreadful fatigue that threatens to drown him anew every year, whenever he meets his new students, as he watches reality distort those eager faces. He forgets that it's he who watches them die, a slow, agonizing death. In the end, however, Shota is a man of logic and a somewhat sound mind. After those few seconds, he draws himself out, minutes before the bell rings. He slouches at the front of the room, his sleeping bag still halfway on and his presence kept quiet. What shitty spatial awareness. He looks at the faces and notes that Izuku Midoriya is not among them. Only 3 minutes to the bell. As I mentioned in the email, Nizu starts, running over to the kettle and pouring themselves a cup of tea. Midoriya had called them a stoat. In his many years of knowing the infamous principle, Shota has never once met a person with that answer. It's always the same I don't know. A rat and a bear? Shota's answer over a decade ago had been no different. Of course, they are wrong. Nizu is, indeed, a mutated stoat, something he'd only found out months into his first year as a Yui teacher. The word stoat wasn't what made Midoriya's answer significant, though. People knew of stoats, and Nizu is an animal with a rat's face and bare paws. The significance lies in seeing through the trick, in being told the word hybrid and sticking with the word stoat only. Your request was rather odd. May I ask why you'd rather enroll in the general education course? Nizu walks over to their desk, stands on the table, and keeps their smile plastered prettily on their face. Shota knows it's an impression of a humanistic smile and finds it to be rather morbid. I don't think I'm qualified. Midoriya's words are clipped, simple, and honest. Unqualified? Very well. Nizu's eyes glint, beady black and bottomless. I suppose that is a conversation for another time. For now, let's get on with why I brought you here today. They gesture to Shota. This is Eraserhead, otherwise Shota Aizawa. Midoriya spares him a glance, eyes raking over his appearance like they did when he first walked in, before turning to Nizu, still silent. Considering how unique your request was, Nizu continues, I'd like to propose certain conditions for discussing your enrollment. You're welcome to decline. Am I? The skepticism is palpable. Nizu tilts their head. Blinks. Smile so morbidly humanistic. You are. But I can't help but warn you that it will be a rather substantial missed opportunity should you choose to. It's an unsaid statement. I can shatter you without batting an eye and make sure you live through it. Midoriya stiffens, guarded eyes hardening. He must hear it too, then what is unsaid? Nizu's posture brightens. Because they all know, it never was a request. The door slides open and Shota's last student walks through. Midoriya in tow. They're talking. Well, the dark blonde, Denki Kaminari, is talking and Midoriya is listening, though his eyes dart around the room the moment they walk in. They find the exits, Shota realizes, briefly settling on the window and vents and second door before taking in anything else. Eventually, his eyes dart to Shota, and he mumbles something to Kaminari, who quiets and follows Midoriya's gaze, eyes widening. Seeing as he's been noticed, Shota steps forward. If you're gonna be hunting for buddies, do it elsewhere. Shota lets his sleeping bag fall off of him as he makes himself known. This is the Department of Heroics. He counts. 1. The ceiling caves in. 2. Blood splatters against the walls. 3. Bullets find their home in soft skulls. 4. Someone loses a limb. 5. Fire rages, high as empire buildings. 6. You can see their bones. 7. All you hear are their screams. 8. The 19 students sit at their desks, attentively. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Life is short, kids. You're lacking in common sense. All it takes is 8 seconds before everyone is dead. All it takes is 8 seconds, and everything you have is taken away from you. All it takes is 8 seconds for the ground to split open and for hell to swallow you whole. 8 measly seconds. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa. He points to the many metal briefcases stacked against the wall. Wear these immediately and then shove off to the P.E. grounds. He looks to Midoriya, who stands at the front, slumped against the wall. He's playing with that same rusted knife Shota remembers from the entrance exam. You follow me, he orders and walks off. All it'll ever take is 8 seconds. When Midoriya walks over to him, he takes 9. Izuku. A quirk apprehension test? How cruel. Izuku remains away from the students, crouched low to the ground, as Aizawa explains to the students what their first lesson will be. When they complain about the entrance ceremony and how they're missing it, Aizawa rebukes them by telling them that frilly niceties aren't made for the Hero Corps students. They have to harden themselves, and can't be made of fluff and cotton candy if they want to have any hope of becoming the next generation of pros. Izuku doesn't have much of an opinion. He briefly considers why he's with the Hero Corps students before decidedly adding his own 2 cents. Besides, what good is a fucking welcome ceremony, anyway? Shouldn't you be familiar with the rules of the school you applied to? Aizawa shoots him a look and Izuku shrugs. It's not like he's here because he wants to be. But Izuku's a bloodhound for threats and danger, and Nizu was a force to be fucking reckoned with. The kind that Izuku avoided. The kind that would never let him die if it came down to it, just live despite. Who are you anyway? The cute girl with bright pink apple cheeks who voiced her concerns about the ceremony asks. And why aren't you dressed in a PE kit? Another person with choppy bangs directs the next question at Aizawa. Didn't you call him over specifically? He's a student too, right? He's wearing the uniform. Oh, I remember you from the entrance exam. Shit, right? You're the manly dude who took down the zero-pointer to save Kaminari, right? No fucking way he took down the zero-pointer? Holy shit, he's so small though. Dude, it was so fucking crazy to watch, like straight out of... When Aizawa silences the class, it's through a sharp glare accompanied by the flare of his quirk. Izuku wonders what it's like to have something you're so reliant on be stripped away in a second. He wonders if it's like losing someone you loved, or like losing a limb. He wonders if it's enough to break you, losing that part of yourself. He wonders with unspoken sadism and an itch in his fingers to test it out. Aizawa looks frightening, eyes glowing red and hair levitating around him. Everyone falls quiet. He isn't in the hero course, Aizawa clarifies briefly, but he's going to be tailing you all per Nizu's request. If you have any questions, you can ask him after class. His tone is strict, with no room for makeway or questioning. Seemingly satisfied, he explains the activity. He goes on a small spiel about the ignorance of the military by never allowing students to hone their quirks, legally, within school grounds. His tone is bitter as he reprimands them, calling it meaningless to police people in their attempt to claim control over the masses. Izuku feels the bitterness sitting in his blood too, understands the anger. He thinks people like Aizawa, though, are crueler. People who understand but can no longer sympathize. Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku straightens at the name. He's been purposefully keeping his eyes off Izuku, ignoring him the way he never did when they were kids. The color of his eyes is unforgettable. Red, like the blood on Izuku's hands and under his nails, staining his skin, stubborn no matter how much he scrapes his palms or rubs the skin raw. Red, like the blood on his hands, on Katsuki's callous to the bone hands, Izuku's blood. How far could you pitch a softball in middle school? 67 meters. It's been 10 months since he's seen that face, 3 years since he's heard, since he's listened, to that voice. It's deeper now, gruff and raw and angry as ever. Try using your quirk this time around. Don't exit the circle. Otherwise, anything applies. Izuku keeps his gaze on Katsuki, holding his nose as the familiar stench of gas and burnt sugar circles the air. It's faint. Katsuki doesn't face him. The heat of his explosions doesn't blister Izuku's skin. Yet it's all he can smell, so strong he thinks he can taste it like syrup coating his tongue. It isn't faint. To him, it'll never be faint. Don't hold back. He won't. Katsuki Bakugo is all in. Always everything. Never nothing. Katsuki smirks a self-satisfied smile. You got it. Katsuki Bakugo never holds back. Eat shit, he screams. It's aggressive as ever. Izuku's surprised he isn't screaming, die, instead. Eat shit, a voice echoes quietly. Before anything else, one must know what they're capable of. Aizawa shows the students his screen, showcasing the impressive number 705.2. This is a rational metric that will form the basis of your hero foundation. Excited chatter follows his words, and Katsuki stuffs his hands in his pockets, a confident leer showing off the glint of his teeth as students praise his high score. We can really use our quirks now, the redhead exclaims happily to the girl with pink skin. That's the Department of Heroics for you. This is going to be fun. Pinky beams back, raising a fist into the air. Izuku sees Aizawa bristle at her words. It looks fun, you say? The old man's hair falls forward, shadowing his features. His lips pull into the fraternal twin of a smile, eyes glowing red. It's sinister, fear-instilling. So you were planning to spend your 3 years here having a good OL time? What happened to becoming heroes? He slowly, methodically, pulls back his hair, showing off a nasty expression. All right then. He grins. It isn't sweet. In that case, new rule. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged hopeless and instantly expelled. The silence is suffocating. Izuku looks at the students and sees which of them already feel damned, students who boiled themselves down to useless the moment Aizawa uttered rank last and expelled in the same sentence. Our freedom means we dispense with students as we please. Aizawa cards his fingers through his hair and out of his face, his smile complemented by his wide, bloodshot stare and dilated pulleys. Welcome to the Department of Heroics. This is our first day here. Applecheeks bravely voices the shared disgruntlement, and even if it weren't, that's just too unreasonable. Aizawa drops his hands, his intimidating presence falling flat. Izuku, mildly perturbed by her naivety, finds himself on his feet, replying before Aizawa can. Unreasonable? Izuku pulls out his switchblade, tucked in his pants pocket, and flicks it open, pointing the end of it at her lazily. He pointedly ignores the warning look Aizawa shoots him. I could kill you right now with just this? A few students gasp at the casually spoken threat, off-put by Izuku's behavior. Aizawa, who must not see Izuku as an immediate threat to his students' safety, stays back, though his gaze is still skeptical and watchful. Izuku continues, Aizawa might try to stop me, but I'm sure I could inflict a good amount of damage, at least. He pauses, eyes flickering between Applecheeks and her shoulder. If I stab you, right by the ligament over there, he points, I could render your entire arm useless forever. The students by her crowd nearer, protective. Izuku doesn't pay it much mind, though he's sure this initial show of goodness and camaraderie would prove good for their future. If I did, would it be fair? Confusion. Very few students follow Izuku's train of thought, though Aizawa finally loosens his stance seeing where Izuku is going with this deviation. I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're trying to prove. And threatening someone is unbecoming of a hero, a smart, velvety voice responds instead. Izuku recognizes that face, the astounding daughter of the Yaoyorozu family. I'm not a hero, Izuku reacts brusquely, and my question wasn't answered. If I suddenly kill her, is it fair? Is it fucking reasonable? Of course, it isn't reasonable. Glasses, wasn't he the boy who poked at Izuku's appearance during the entrance exam? Interjects, it's murder without justification. He looks like Ingenium. Probably an Ida. Izuku shrugs. That doesn't mean I won't do it. He gestures to the scars on his face with a blade. Do you think the people who gave me this cared about fairness? About being reasonable? Do you think they were justified in their actions? Or that I decided on a whim to slam my face into uneven concrete and then take sandpaper to the bleeding wounds? Is that what you think happened? No. What happened was that Izuku was 12. So young. Too young and small. But 12 was big enough to know how to hurt someone. 12 was big enough for his bullies to realize that maybe, next year, they'll lose their favorite cork dummy. 12 was big enough to know that it didn't matter what they did to someone like Izuku, not at all, not now that they were leaving. 12 was big enough for the kids his age to find it funny to leave him with a grand finale for a final memory of his elementary school years. Stop. Stop. It hurts. I can't see. Stop. Please. Stop. 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 STV stop. 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 STV stop. Stop. STV stop. 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 QSTOPO. Put. 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 Code. Put. 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 Code. Put. Code. Put. Code. Put. 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 Stop stop. Put. 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 Stop. Put. 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 Stop. Put. 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 Code at stop co. Put. 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 Co.co. Put. Put. Stop 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 stop. Co.co. Put. 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 Stop 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 stop. Co.stop stop co.stop stop 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 sto. Stop sto co.stop stop 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 st. OPSTOP STOP 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 PST OPSTOP STOP 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 STOPCO Co STOPS TOPS TOPSTOP STOP.STOP STOP 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 STOP. They didn't listen. Izuku's head was slammed into the road and pavement hard enough that he swore his brain was leaking from his skull. They did it until he could only groan, saliva and blood dribbling down his skin and staining his clothes. They did it and complained and whined when Izuku stopped screaming, so they found a broken bottle and pressed the glass into the large, gaping wounds on Izuku's face. Then they laughed and laughed and laughed until Izuku was throwing up the little he managed to eat. They laughed more and made him lick it up. Laughed as he cut his tongue. 12-year-old boys who were not big but big enough to know what a scar was and the memories it could leave behind. But Izuku doesn't remember the moments very clearly, only that it hurt. He doesn't remember a lot, back then. Her. How could you forget her? She just died. You can't cry over spilt blood that isn't yours, not until you're done crying over hers. Will you ever be? Izuku swallows. You guys chose to be heroes. You signed up for this shit. What? Did you think they lived in mansions and did nothing else? Did you think they always won? Don't be so fucking stupid. People aren't reasonable. Not just villains, not just the kids who fucked up my face, but people. Humans. You and fucking me. Japan isn't reasonable. If your ultimate aspiration in life is to fight off psychos who are looking to raise hell, you can't expect reasonability. Not unless you're looking to be killed before you can even graduate. Izuku folds the knife back into its holder and slips it back into his pocket, pressing against the base of his throat with the hell of his palm. His voice hurts. When he looks up at Aizawa, he blinks at the mildly impressed, more obviously aghast expression he wears. It's dripping with melancholy. Izuku's sure Aizawa would have said the same thing, though, just gifted in a less ugly box. But Aizawa is a grown man at 30. He's a pro-hero, a teacher, a mentor, a father. Aizawa has peeled bodies off bloody pavements and picked up kids with chipped teeth and moldy bread for dinner. He knows how vile the world is because he's 30 and he learnt. Izuku is a kid. Aizawa turns his gaze, then as does Izuku, noting all eyes on him now. The expressions vary, from contemptuous to intrigued to fearful to contemplative. Kaminari looked odd, his cheeks a quiet flush of pink. This is plus ultra, Aizawa reminds them. I expect you to overcome these trials and climb to the top. Really, who are you anyway? A cool voice demands. Izuku recognizes the Todoroki air, instantaneously eyes finding the distinctive scar before all else. Momentarily he's put off by the boy's beauty. Holy shit. Pretty. Pretty as fuck. Where the hell did get that from, because it surely wasn't Endeavor. Aizawa-sensei said you weren't a hero, you're in the uniform so you are a student, and you're our age. I would like to know why a student is tailing us. Aizawa sighs, pinches the bridge of his nose, and mutters something under his breath before gesturing for Izuku to stand at his side. He placed in the entrance exam with all of you, but declined admission into the heroics department, wanting to remain in general education only. Resultingly, Nizu offered him a proposal to ensure his talents weren't going to waste. What a way to make it sound pretty, Izuku mumbles dryly. Aizawa rolls his eyes, blatantly ignoring Izuku as he's officially introduced. Everyone, please welcome Nizu's personally chosen representative, Izuku Midoriya of 1C. A bang, Loud and hot and loud, loud, loud and hot and low. Deku? Representative. Izuku repeats skeptically, half a mind to throw himself out of the window. You want me to be your representative? I believe that is what I said. Although Nizu gestures to nothing, Izuku knows they're gesturing to the world and the universe, to hate, greed, and power. Or maybe they are gesturing at nothing, and grandiosity is Izuku's means of justifying such an outlandish request. I would like you to be my personal representative. And what does that entail? Their beady eyes crinkle, and though it's disturbing, Izuku feels it's reassuring too. He knows he's asking the right questions. Only ever ask the right questions. Observations, analysis, strategizing. I would like you to watch over Class 1A up until the end of their summer training camp, which you would be attending. There's more. Do not fret, you are not obligated to participate in the classes, nor will you be attending them continuously, as you are, currently, enrolled in general education. You'll only tail the class when Aizawa is present, and you do not have to report your findings back to me daily, though I will call you in on occasion. And then, after the training camp, if you have yet to change your mind, I will officially accept your decline to join the heroics course. Is that all right with you? Motherfucker. Katsuki would be lying if he said he didn't have expectations for Yui. They weren't as grand as they had been when he was young, but for someone who'd been told he was the best, to be enrolled in the most prestigious and praised hero course in Japan, Katsuki expected the best. The closest thing to perfection. Katsuki's expectations have all been met, up until this point. He got in like he said he would, and ranked first like he knew he would be. He's fucking Katsuki Bakugo. He wins. He'll always win. Always. He comes in with the same sureness he's carried on his shoulders since he was 4, and a teacher told him he was destined for greatness. He's a tower of bravado, toughness, and arrogance backed by talent. He comes in, expecting to meet some of Japan's greatest talent, and isn't disappointed but isn't awed, yet thither. He doesn't expect the short, green-haired student to walk in among the rest of the students. He doesn't expect to see the same, once brilliant green eyes he could have sworn he met nearly 10 months ago. But did you? Did you really see him? You say once brilliant because the eyes you saw were dull. The person you saw looked nothing like the boy you remember, and everything like him too. So did you? Did you really see him? Are you sure? Are you honest? Katsuki isn't sure he saw him though. His mother told him he must have lost it, and the boy who ran after him as he died was held hostage looked like hell had run him over twice. So did he see him? Really? Is he sure? Wasn't it All Might who saved him? Because the boy who left wasn't the happy-go-lucky kid Katsuki sees in his nightmares remembers in passing. The boy who reached for the slime with broken fingernails was a familiar-looking stranger. He had to be. Katsuki couldn't accept any other conclusions. So, when his expectations are defied and the same boy walks into the classroom with some dark blonde in tow, Katsuki decides right then and there that he is no more than a familiar-looking stranger. Deku was a happy, bright kid. Deku didn't bear such dark scars on his face. Deku smiled like the world was made of color. That was who Katsuki mourns remembers. The kid with galaxies and meadows in his eyes. His beliefs are only further cemented when the stranger speaks. He's too mean, too harsh, too cruel, to be Deku. Deku would weep when butterflies died. When the pretty boy with a fucked-up face asks who he is and asks for his name, Katsuki can't help but lean in. Just to confirm that the person was indeed a stranger and not the boy who left 3 years ago. That the boy from 10 months ago was not Deku, and that his mother was right this time. That Katsuki lost it because not enough oxygen was reaching his head. Everyone, please welcome Nizu's personally chosen representative, Izuku Midoriya of 1C. Deku? No one tells you how to prepare for loss. Not death, but loss. Disappearance. When it comes to death, there's a body. With death, you know there is no return. With death, there's a sense, a semblance, of closure. When it comes to loss, there's nothing but question after question, a where and why and what. Never how or when or who. No one cares about how or when or who if you don't know the where, why and what. Where are you? Where did you go? Where can I find you? Why aren't you here? Why did you leave? Why do I know nothing? What happened? Because with loss, There is no hate or resentment or grief, but gut-wrenching confusion. It eats at you. No matter how strong you are, how brave, or how ferocious. You can be number one, lie in serpent's tongue and use your fists to prove you're fine, but that's all it'll ever be, a lie. Not a pretty white lie, but a grotesque one. A lie in the shape of a gargantuan, wicked monster, with wet lips leaking slobber, gouged out bleeding eyes and razor-sharp teeth. It's a monster that likes the way you taste, the way you scream, the way you beg. The way you go mad wondering where and why and what. You'll never get over loss. Because loss has no end or middle. It's only a beginning, a reread of the first chapter, again and again, questions that can be answered if you just turn the damn page. Except there are no pages to turn to. It's impossible. You'll never get over loss. And if the person is found. Deku? It's followed by a series of explosions, not a small, feeble pop and crack, but a resonating boom. Katsuki's ears ring. He careens himself, flying mid-air and fisting Deku's uniform shirt in his smoldering palms. This is Deku. He's all scars and washed-out skin and limp hair, but some fucking how, it's Deku. What the fuck, he cries, even though he's so close he can count Deku's eyelashes, curly and long. He remembers a lifetime ago when every time he blinked it was like his eyes shone even brighter. He's so close he can see his freckles, how they cluster around his cheeks and across the bridge of his nose. He remembers a lifetime ago when Deku would count them, frustrated every time he lost count. He'd giggle about how pretty they made him feel. He's so close he can see his scars, the textured skin running down his forehead, over his cheek, scars that were never there. So close he can see the bruises under his eyes, far darker than he ever remembered. So close he can see the glinting piercings. There's no lifetime ago to remember. This is new. These parts of him are new. It's wrong. He's so close he thinks it isn't Deku. So close he knows that it is. What the fuck, he repeats, deaf and blind to everyone but Deku, Deku who stands here. No, he sits. Katsuki pushed him to the floor, startled with glazed-over eyes, scared. Like a lifetime ago. When the person is found, it isn't relief or happiness or joy that hugs you. It's anger and pain and raw hurt. Because nothing is the right answer because you never wanted an answer. The monster will lurk forever. You still can't turn the fucking page. You gonna explain what fucking bullshit trick you're trying to pull, huh? Katsuki shakes him, but Deku doesn't answer. He fists the dirt, but he stays quiet. What the fuck do you think you're doing here? He roars. His palms spark, hotter and hotter, sweat collecting. In an instant, the heat is gone, fabric is wrapped around Katsuki's wrist and he's tugged away. He's restrained, thrashing wildly, still fucking screaming. You think you can just show up after leaving for years, you useless nerd. Think that a few scars and piercings suddenly mean you're the shit. Who the fuck do you think you are, you useless, worthless asswipe? You think you can beat me now that I... His words are cut off when the fabric pulls against his jaw, muffling his voice. It tastes like shit. Katsuki Bakugo, the voice of his teacher, orders, you aren't to attack any students, especially unprovoked. This behavior can warrant expulsion. Katsuki stops flailing. He only wins. He can't be expelled. He's Katsuki Bakugo. And that's useless, quirkless, stupid fucking Deku. Denki jogs over to Midoriya. The second Aizawa pulls away the explosive blonde, Bakugo. It's frightening. Not the horror movie creepy doll blinks at you frightening, but my dad said he'd be here 3 hours ago but isn't frightening. The I hope he's alive frightening. Midoriya doesn't react when he gently lifts him. He isn't hurt, save for the few scrapes on his palms and the char on his uniform. Denki has to gently shake him, once, twice, before he startles, spine going straight and feet moving into a stance as if ready for a brawl. Hey dude, Denki tells him warily. In the background, Aizawa is reprimanding Bakugo. Dude, where are you? You're in the yard with my class, 1A, and the teacher, Aizawa-sensei. He keeps his hand on Midoriya's shoulder and squeezes lightly. Midoriya flinches, shaking it off weakly. Denki stays at his side, pressed against him. Midoriya's dissociating as he did at the hospital. Denki, human in the way that he always wanted to know, wonders why. If it's to do with Bakugo, if it's some faceless asshole. He thinks it's the story behind some of his scars and the cynical lens Midoriya has on the world. He knows it's to do with the unfairness and cruelty he'd uncurtained for them a few minutes ago, holding a knife to their throats. Suddenly, Midoriya jerks. Deki's eyes zero in on the blood dripping down his curled fist. He grabs his hand and gently pries his fingers. Izuku lets him, his chest rising and falling rhythmically as he gains his bearings. The deep, crescent-shaped open scars in Midoriya's palms are worrying. Midoriya, using pain as a grounding method, rubs Denki the wrong way, but he says nothing because he doesn't know what to say. Denki uses the edge of his shirt to wipe away some of the blood and hopes it offers the smallest comfort. Midoriya's eyes come to focus on Denki, before moving to where Aizawa is threatening a gone-silent Bakugo. "Sorry," he says quietly, so only Denki can hear. "It's no problem," Denki shrugs. He plasters a goofy smile because being silly is fun and distracting, and Denki likes being that. Knows how to be that. "Just call me your hero." He wiggles his eyebrows suggestively. "Maybe more." Midoriya shakes his head bemusedly. Denki takes it as a win. "As for that Bakugo dude," he whispers it for Midoriya's ears only, "I don't think you have to worry about him attacking you randomly. Aizawa-sensei's drilled into him that it is grounds for expulsion." He sees Midoriya's twitch, surprised. But Denki won't ask today. "Man, he's scary," Denki adds. "Only been 15 minutes and I've almost pissed my pants twice. Especially with this whole quirk apprehension test. My quirk isn't suited for it at all." Midoriya gives him a look that Denki's grown way too familiar with over the phone. A look that just screams, "Shut up before I kick you." "Am I wrong?" Denki mutters. "Aizawa is cruel," Midoriya admits, sparing the man a glance. "He still has Bakugo wrapped up. But he's fair. Or tries to be. You think?" Denki asks skeptically. Izuku hums. "Anyways," Aizawa draws back their attention. "Let us continue." Izuku. The girl whose quirk turns her invisible comes dead last, followed closely by the girl with earphone jacks for lobes, and then Kaminari, who looks like he's about to shit himself. The last 3 students have yet to finish the final test, but the gap is too far between them and those in last place to make a difference. They aren't aware of it yet. Izuku had been given the tablet to attach their names to their faces, and the ranking is glaring up at him where he's slouching by Aizawa. He fights the urge to reassure Kaminari that he hadn't placed last as he watches the electricity user stim. He's sort of reminding Izuku of a live wire, left to fray and spark in a room doused in gasoline, waiting to slap the floor and set the room alight. Izuku likes Kaminari. He wants to ease Kaminari's nerves. Well, he supposes, Kaminari must have some sense if he's this nervous. After all, the ranking was pretty sensical and predictable. The quirks of the last 3 are unfathomably useless for this sort of exercise. At least, at this level or practice. Electrification did not make you run faster, manipulating vibrations did not tighten your grip, though strengthening her ability to amplify sounds would have definitely helped her in the other tests. Light refraction worked better when it came to illusions, not when it came to throwing a ball. The students following them, too, had rather useless quirks. Or, in the case of the glittery person, heavily unstable ones. It was either strength given to them by their mutations or some one-hit wonder application of their quirk that was only practical for one of the exercises that put them ahead. "Where do you think you'd place?" Aizawa asks him as Momo Yaoyorozu lands her long jump. She'd used her quirk to pull out a pogo stick. Izuku had been momentarily mesmerized by the glittering skin, curious to know if it was a trick of the light or the tiny atoms of her flesh being eaten away, the fragments catching the sun as it splits open and seals itself again. Izuku looks back at the rankings and points. 14th, he decides. Maybe 15th? Why? Izuku holds his breath, remembers that Aizawa had asked and, probably, wouldn't rip out his vocal cords for answering, and relaxes. The students in last place are there because they don't know how to use their quirks in this exercise, or their quirks serve no purpose. "I'd take it I'm faster than them." He points to the short boy with orbs for hair and the glittery, bing. Their quirks only benefited them in one exercise, but their athletic abilities outside of their quirks are the worst in the class. I'd guess the purple thing is weaker than anyone here. Even though he's placed 17th? He got lucky with the side jump. Izuku shows the point difference between 20th and 15th place. There isn't much of a jump in between these numbers. The guy with the animal quirk managed to pull ahead of the boy with balls for a head despite never once utilizing his quirk. Kaminari is 20 points from surpassing him. Aizawa says nothing, but there's something in the way he looks at Izuku, apprehension and understanding, Izuku thinks. This test is stupid, Izuku says as Aizawa rounds the students to gather by him, keeping his voice low. Aizawa raises an eyebrow but gives no reply. Izuku keeps his eyes on the students. Students like Yaoyorozu, Todoroki and Katsuki are confident, proud, calm and collected. Students like the invisible girl, Kaminari, the grape-headed boy, are nervous and twitching, glistening with sweat. Time to present the results. Aizawa hands over papers to every student. The invisible girl, Toru Hagakure. Izuku has to make a point to use their names now that he's had time to learn them, makes a noise akin to a pained whimper. Aizawa smiles. It's a really ugly smile. Oh yeah, that whole expulsion thing was a lie, he says like he's talking about the weather, a subtle change in the forecast, purposefully ignorant to the horrific ways some of his students look at him. It was a logical ruse to pull out your best performances? What? Rings out like a chorus from some demented choir, and Izuku looks at Aizawa with a frown. He knew Aizawa was cruel. He reminds him of a local prostitute he's acquainted with, Ayla. She's nasty, likes to raid the wallets of pathetic men who spend too much time in bars and clubs instead of with their wives and little kids. He's cruel like her, vindictive and sly. But Ayla and her friends survive with their vixen-like smiles and guile tongues. Aizawa lives. Obviously it was a ruse. Yaoyorozu folds her arms. It'd be more haughty if not for the way her eyes are genuine with confusion. Use your brains, you guys. You're lying, Izuku confronts Aizawa as the class heads over to the lockers to change back into their uniforms. The whole logical ruse thing was a lie. Nisa gave me your file, you have the highest expulsion rate. They're heroes in training and like you said, life is unreasonable. If a student was lacking potential, they would have been expelled for a week before I'd re-enroll them, cementing the idea that a career in heroics isn't plausible for narrow-minded and naive kids. Izuku knows this too. Aizawa has the highest expulsion rate because he's expelled 3 students total in his entire career, and the other teachers don't have the same authority. Aside from Vlad King, who's never deemed it necessary. Almost always, if Aizawa expels a student at the start of the year, within a week he re-enrolls them. It's an effective warning. That doesn't make him any more honest. If those students were me, Aizawa, Izuku forgoes that sensei because Aizawa isn't his teacher, and forgoes its sand or tsama because Izuku doesn't care for manners. If they were quirkless or deemed useless because of their quirk, an exercise that at first impression is clearly biased, Izuku thinks about himself, the version of him that was well and alive before her passing, stuttering and nervous, fingernails bitten to the skin, blood on his lips as he watches students surpass him with the ease of someone born just a tad luckier. He thinks about his desperation, his obsession, and how he'd made them his lifelines. Had he been expelled, Aizawa wouldn't have had the week to re-enroll him. Izuku would have killed himself that night. Students will lose their trust in you as a teacher. He knows he's overstepped his boundaries. But his knife is still in his hand, and Aizawa's a good distance away. He could run, slit his own throat, slit Aizawa's. Just passing thoughts. Much to his astonishment, however, Aizawa doesn't yell. Instead, he gives Izuku another look, like he understands one part of him and is confused by another. I'll keep that in mind. He looks away. Head to class, you wouldn't want to be late for your first lesson? Izuku nods, bewildered, and walks off. Aizawa hadn't mocked him, hit him, or threatened to choke him with a binding cloth. Good. Shota. Students will lose their trust in you as a teacher. Shota's a smart man. He prides himself on his intelligence and quick judgment. There is no room for fruitless thinking and inefficiency in his line of work, as both a hero and a teacher. As a man most attentive to logic and objectivity, he's predisposed to breaking down people and their authorizations to understand them. Otherwise, he refuses to obey them. This is until he meets Nizu. Nizu is an enigma to him. They're impossibly shrewd with foresight only rivaled by that of Sasaki, and they're fiendish, brutal, and unforgiving. They have no concept of humanity, and that in itself is frightening. To think about how someone so intelligent is simmering in constant anger directed at humans at that, it's unnerving. Nizu is one of the few people Shota will listen to without question. It's not that he doesn't doubt him, that he's never hesitant or confused. More often than not, the orders Nizu has him undergo drive him up the wall. Regardless, he listens. Unlike people, Nizu can't be driven by empathy and care, and so even if Shota doesn't understand or answer all the questions, he knows that there's gain. And sacrifice. But there is always sacrifice. Nizu is far from saint-like, but they are on humanity's side. Nizu, no matter how pissed and vengeful, is a curious stoat, and humans make them curious. They feed their curiosity as everyone else waits with bated breath for the day they decidedly become bored. So, when Nizu tells Shota that Izuku Midoriya is going to be tailing them until the training camp, before the provisional license exam, he doesn't question it. Midoriya is a puzzling character, and Nizu's always seen more than Shota ever could, so Shota complies. To hear Izuku Midoriya so quickly critique the test, critique his judgment, with such a clipped, straightforward tone, Shota understands the intrigue. Having him tail 1A feels more meritable. Surely, his insight would widen the hopeful heroes to be. Midoriya is calculating and cold. He's blunt, his humor dry, and, from the snippets of conversation he's heard from Midoriya's conversations with Kaminari, a little crude. He's not only smart, something Shota could deduce from his exemplary scores in the written exams, but he's also analytical. Like Shota, Midoriya breaks things apart. But where Shota does so to learn more about them, Midoriya does it to simplify and rebuild them to his liking. Like Nizu. It's no wonder he's piqued the stoat's interest. Midoriya's a shattered mirror, a warped and twisted reflection, the other side of the coin. He reminds Shota of himself and yet is nothing like him. He offers a new perspective. He has an irreplaceable potential that's yet to be honed. He's like a poorly wrapped gift from a fallen angel sporting a demon's eyes. Where's the Midoriya boy? Uraraka Achiko asks him, coming out of the locker rooms with a few other students. He's going to Gen Ed now, Kaminari answers in his stead, showing up behind her. He told me he's only gonna be here if Aizawa-sensei is here, or if he's, ordered to show up any other time for some reason. Right, sensei? Shota nods in confirmation. Midoriya's circumstances are especially unique, so Nizu's leaving him for me to handle, for now. Uraraka's eyes glitter. Shota's having none of it. All of you get to class, he orders before she can attack him with questions. You have art history. The sound of someone clicking their tongue drags Shota's eyes to Katsuki Bakugo, arms folded over his chest defensively as he slouches to the doors. Shota presses his thumb and forefinger to the bridge of his nose, already dreading the oncoming headache. He'd briefly forgotten about the blonde's outburst. It's not even 1 hour into the new school year that Shota feels like he's being underpaid. Hitoshi. Life sucks, Hitoshi muses sardonically, as his classmates none too subtly scoot away their desks and chairs from his vicinity. See, because the government is cruel, hero schools are ordered to disclose all necessary information about a student on their student badges. On Hitoshi's badge, in small, legible, bold font, right under his birthday, is his quirk. Brainwashing. Hitoshi hates the name. Even if his quirk is brainwashing, even if he knows nothing about its logistics and technicalities, after all, how could he ever practice using such a villainous quirk? He hates it. All he knows is he can, essentially, make someone susceptible to any action so long as they answer his question. It's like extra strong persuasion or manipulation or something. The kind of quirk successful cult leaders have, but a little more effective. He could have called it so many other things. Hi. My name is Hitoshi Shinso, and my quirk is persuasion. That sounds nicer, almost. It paints Hitoshi as an incredible debater, a man skilled with his words. But Hitoshi's quirk manifested when he was 5 and still very fucking stupid. Stupid enough to let his uncle, whose dislike for him was so obvious Hitoshi could smell it, choose the name for him. He thought it'd make the bastard hate him less, make him stop yelling at Hitoshi for fucking existing. Instead, it brought on years of people yelling at Hitoshi for speaking, assholes threatening to cut his tongue out, beatings and bullying and bullshit. And because life sucks, when Hitoshi finds his seat on the seating chart, slumping into it and far too tired to make much of anything, a different student with a square chin and a pompadour on his fucking head, seriously what the fuck is that hairstyle? Snatches his ID tag. Because life really fucking sucks, the student yells out his information for everyone from heaven to hell to hear, like some fucking game show host introducing Hitoshi as a contestant. Hitoshi Shinso. He waves the card around. Quirk. Hitoshi's expecting it, is always expecting it. Yet, when the guy drops the badge like it burned, the plastic clattering against the floor, he can't help the way his stomach rolls. What's up? A girl with long blonde hair and pale yellow eyes asks, what's his quirk? Brainwashing. For all Hitoshi loves the quiet, the silence that follows hurts. Oh. A different girl with a petulant sneer looks Hitoshi up and down and then turns her nose. Pity. That became that. No one approaches him, no one acknowledges him. It's better than during his middle school years when they'd carve words into his desk and leave notes in his locker, or smirk and giggle when he was forced to wear the special accommodation his uncle insisted was necessary for a boy with a quirk like his. Hey. Hey. A cheery, happy-go-lucky voice cuts through the chatter. The students scramble to their seats. Hitoshi notes that the guy seated in front of him isn't present, as their homeroom teacher walks in. Present Mike, Hisashi Yamada. Dead. Nice to meet ya, little listeners. He grins up at them. The name's Present Mike, but you guys can call me Yamada-sensei or Mike-sensei, they both work. He gestures to the little copy of their schedule posted on the chalkboard. I'm both your English and homeroom teacher, so you're going to be seeing a lot of me around. Hope we get along well. His eyes gloss over the seats, lingering on the empty desk in front of Hitoshi, acknowledging it silently. Seems like everyone is present. I'll do a proper roll call after the orientation ceremony. Come on, let's head on. When Hitoshi steps into line, students shuffle away from him. When he takes his seat in the large auditorium, they leave the seat by him unoccupied and glance at him like he'll injure them by meeting their eyes. It's all so grossly familiar. I should think about changing the fucking name of my quirk. Orientation is an hour of Hitoshi's life that he'll never get back. He feels resigned to his fate as they're taken back to their classroom. It's going to be another lonesome, boring, hateful year. Another year of glares and whispers and friendless lunches, empty notifications and sleepless nights. Hold on, students. Hisashi waves his hands to garner their attention. I seem to have misplaced the attendance board. Take your seats and wait for a second while I fetch it. He scrambles, discreetly tapping Hitoshi's shoulder twice before heading off. It's a sweet gesture and makes Hitoshi feel less like shit when he heads back to his seat. He does a double take once he's taken his seat. There's the student, the boy? He isn't sure anymore. From the entrance exam, the one Hitoshi couldn't forget. Looking more closely, he notes how long their hair is, curling to a little above their waist and absolutely wild, tied back in a half-updo in an abortive attempt to look neat. Their back is to Hitoshi, hunched over as they draw into the notebook in front of them. Hitoshi entertains what someone so curious-looking might be writing or drawing. It isn't often that people draw Hitoshi's attention so instantaneously and effortlessly, and it's even rarer that Hitoshi thinks of speaking to them at all. People are mean. They leave. They leave people like Hitoshi, and Hitoshi's done bothering with disappointment. Lost in deprecating thought, Hitoshi's only startled out of it when the student turns their head and asks, "Are you all right?" Hitoshi jolts, ears flushing pink at having been caught staring. He doesn't look away though, now getting a better look at who he's more sure is a boy his age. He has very bright, vibrant green eyes punctuated by deep eyebags and a lack of luster. He's wearing a very bored, unmoving expression, but it isn't as intimidating as Hitoshi thinks it could be. His scars are more visible with his hair like this, and they have a silver ring that glints on their right eyebrow among their other piercings that Hitoshi hadn't seen 2 months ago. Hitoshi's throat starts to constrict the longer the silence between them is held. He feels lava slide down his throat, feels something glue his teeth shut together. Swallow. Relax. Count to 5. Move your tongue. Step by step, Hitoshi. You're not obligated to speak if you can't bring yourself to. Hitoshi takes a deep breath through his nose, choking out a heavily stuttered, sorry. The student tilts his head, still with the same expression. You're from the entrance exam. Hitoshi blinks. He didn't think he'd be remembered. Yeah, he confirms. You helped? He helped me. Thank you, Vagan. Don't mention it. For someone who is so done with disappointment, Hitoshi's always been reckless with hope. Always a little too optimistic. Too desperate for it. He persists. It's Hitoshi Shinso. Hitoshi pauses, adding, he-o or him. Izuku Midoriya, he/him. Before Midoriya can say anything else, a different voice interrupts the conversation. The kid with the pompadour hairstyle. Don't talk to him, he whispers loudly, like Hitoshi can't fucking hear. His quirk is brainwashing. Well, it was fun while it lasted. Hitoshi sours before the reaction. It's not like it'll be any different. No one bothers with him once they know. Even if they don't outwardly show disdain like Pompadour, they're always too hesitant or scared or disgusted to bother with a relationship. It isn't worth the trouble to determine if the stereotypes associated with people with quirks like his were true or not to him. It didn't matter if he never gave them a reason to think they did. Except it is. Midoriya doesn't recoil, and his eyes don't darken or wrinkle with disdain at the information. Rather, it's Pompadour who's looked at like he's worth less than the dirt staining the soles of their shoes. It's fucking gloriously insulting. Hitoshi almost laughs. So? Midoriya's eyes trail to Pompadour's hair. I don't think someone with a fucking poodle on his head has any right judging other people. Just like during the entrance exam, when Midoriya speaks it's quiet, but it cuts through the noise like a knife. People snicker and giggle. Hitoshi can't help but snort too. Pompadour flushes red. I'm just trying to help, he grits out. You don't know what he could do to you. What he could do to me. Midoriya reiterates, leaning back in his chair and cocking an eyebrow. You must be one perverted, sick-in-the-head bastard. I mean, to think like that, the insinuation is left as an open statement as vulgar as being stamped with the scarlet letters A. Hitoshi nearly chokes on the fucking air. A few students gasp, scandalized, and the laughter picks up again. Pompadour, impressively, gets even redder. Hitoshi would think someone walking around with a hairstyle like his would be shameless, but he's been mistaken. Not like that. I mean, Midoriya continues, not acknowledging Pompadour's stuttering rebuttal, I do think it'd be a little fun to be ordered around like that, you know, at someone's mercy. He smirks, the sharp fong of his canine glinting. But to voice it to everyone, you're one ballsy motherfucker. That is not what I was talking about. Pompadour splutters over the shared laughter. Hitoshi grins to himself. Take a seat, poodlehead. Midoriya nods to the empty chair a few desks down. Before you embarrass yourself further. Heated, Pompadour stomps, knees going up and footsteps coming down loudly, away like a toddler, face in his hands as the giggles die out. Thanks, Hitoshi says, feeling déjà vu. I would have insulted his hairstyle at some point anyway, Midoriya mutters. Don't worry about it. Hitoshi leans on his elbows and presses his palm to his lips, hiding a smile behind his fingers. Midoriya treats him fine, is mean but not mean. Since taking him in, Hitoshi's dads have tried to instill into him that being treated humanely wasn't a luxury, but a right. Hitoshi isn't so disillusioned though. Kindness, never mind basic humanity, given to people like him, is a privilege. Midoriya isn't telling him not to feel gracious for sticking up for him, and Hitoshi wonders if it means he recognizes that what he's done is eons more than what people think someone like Hitoshi deserves. Even if it isn't true from a place of morality, it is from a place of majority, and society is dictated by the masses, after all. Kindness is something that should be held in people's prayers, but it is only people like him who recognize how seldom people can be kind. Is Midoriya a person like him? Hisashi chooses to walk in then, clipboard in hand and smile as broad as ever. His eyes catch Hitoshi before sliding over to Midoriya, expression blanching. It hits Hitoshi that Midoriya wasn't there for orientation, It hits him that Midoriya is a little unnerving, then too. Hisashi's expression reflects the sentiment. Well, since it's the first day, I want everyone to stand up and introduce themselves. Mike smiles. It's he/him, by the way. Hitoshi feels dread pool in the pit of his stomach, the feeling worsening when he realizes he'll be the last to introduce himself. He gently taps his finger at the corner of the desk and focuses on the other student's introduction to help ease his anxiety. He learns Pompadour's real name is Tsutsutaka Agoyamato, decides that he isn't worth the respect of being remembered by his name, and files him, officially, under the moniker Pompadour in his head. Although Midoriya is second last to go, Hisashi glosses over him and gestures for Hitoshi instead. The pressure of feeling unprepared overwhelms Hitoshi's confusion, and he reactively signs his greeting. Being around too many people makes him feel like the barbed wire he'd swallowed years ago is tightening around his vocal cords. It's still hard to speak in crowds. Hisashi translates with a smile, moving on like nothing was amiss. Students look at Hitoshi with bemused and skeptical stares. After all, villains aren't mute, especially not ones with, likely, voice-activated quirks. Jesus fuck, look away you pieces of shit. They do, to turn to Midoriya. Hitoshi turns to him too. Why didn't they greet themselves? The girl with the petulant sneer, Togiki, asks, folding her arms across her chest and glaring at Midoriya. That same unnerved expression that looks almost foreign on Hisashi's face resurfaces. Nonetheless, he claps his hand and waves Midoriya over. With obvious reluctance, Midoriya drags his way to the front. Hisashi almost pats his shoulder, hand freezing midway before dropping limply at his side. Introduce yourself. Izuku Midoriya, he/him. Midoriya bows. Hitoshi feels the hairs on the back of his neck stand. Did he sound this cold earlier? And what makes him special? Pompadour disdains, cheeks still pink. Midoriya here is a one-of-a-kind case. Hisashi looks at Midoriya encouragingly, but he doesn't budge, giving Hisashi a look that screams, "This is on you." Hisashi, ever the expressive man, deflates. To put it simply, he isn't going to be present for every lesson and will take frequent, unprompted absences. His circumstances permit him to leave during impromptu moments, too. The other teachers are aware, but seeing as you guys are his classmates, I thought it was necessary to explain to keep you all from worrying. Hitoshi's interest heightens. Why? Pompadour asks. Hisashi tries for that look again, but Midoriya still makes no move to elaborate. Hisashi dims again. Midoriya is Nizu's personal representative. He'll be taking leaves to tail the Hero Corps students of Class 1A as part of the requirements regarding his enrollment at UI. Please, keep this information amongst yourselves as most people aren't privy to it. Though Hisashi says it casually, Hitoshi can tell, with the way his mustache quirks and the frantic back and forth of his pupils, that he's apprehensive. Nizu-sama's representative? Pompadour is significantly less snotty as the weight of Midoriya's title makes itself apparent. Hitoshi can feel the weight too, a heavy, heavy weight that takes up all the space in the room, suffocating them. Midoriya's reputation is writing itself in the history books despite it only being his first day. After all, Nizu was known infamously as Yui's demonic principal. As far as people are aware, he's never had a representative before, never mind a first year in the general education course. Quietly, astonished, Pompadour then questions, what kind of quirk is someone born with to be that? Hitoshi can't help the way he leans in, as eager as the others to know. Your quirk defines your very existence. He knows that better than anyone. Midoriya looks rough, looks like someone cut from old stone, not marble. He is dirt-stained and heavily scarred, doesn't give the impression of someone silver spoon-fed. But to be Principal Nizu's representative, why does that matter? Hisashi tries to evade the question, laughing it off with an easy smile. Hitoshi's lived with the man for 2 years, now. He can see how it sits on his face a little too perfectly. Because, Togiki states, to be Nizu-sama's representative, it has to be something good. right? And if he's that good, why is he in the general education course, anyways? Hitoshi agrees. It's the ugliest kind of truth. It keeps him bitter to have to acknowledge that. The ugliest truth. Yes, Midoriya was nice to him and stood up for him, but this truth that he knows means that he's also too out of reach. Impossible. He must have a pretty, powerful, perfect quirk. Something that promised him a flashy, fulfilling future. Hitoshi's struggle is something he'll never know, and within the week he'll already be out of Hitoshi's line of vision and light years ahead. It really is a bitter taste on his tongue. It's fine, Midoriya assures Hisashi, who falls quiet. It's a feat so rare Hitoshi straightens. Hisashi's very existence outside of his house is noise, loud, boisterous noise. Midoriya's demeanor hardens. He falls into a stance Hitoshi has seen with his other dad, one with nearly no openings. He pulls out an old, gray plastic handle that looks molded to his grip and holds it up like a weapon. Midoriya, Hisashi warns, and it's enough to drown the room with fear and apprehension. It's fascinating. Midoriya is fascinating. How is it that he can make a dented, ratty plastic handle look like a diamond? Better yet, how does he make it look like a loaded gun or a waiting grenade? Midoriya rolls his eyes but does not shift or relax. I'm quirkless. He doesn't hesitate, states it like one would declare the upcoming weather or tell you about their favorite color. Nonchalant. Serious. He blinks twice before someone takes a breath. Quirkless? The ugliest truth is still a truth. Quirks are who you are. They build your character, define your legacy, fate your future. Hitoshi knows this, has lived, endured, and shattered in consequence. But Midoriya is there, not quite slouching at the front of Hitoshi's homeroom, standing by his father as 19 students stare at him incomprehensibly. He's there with a title, a name. He stands there, hair framing his soft but roughened features, suddenly demanding attention by daring to exist. No fucking way, Pompadour jeers. So you were a fucking charity case then? Quirkless. The worst of the worst. If Hitoshi is the black sheep, Midoriya is the dye in his wool, the poison he drinks. Is he a charity case? Hitoshi thinks of his eyes, his scars, the bandages peeking through his blazer and the scuff marks on his sneakers, the way he speaks and the words he says. He thinks of him, the so little he knows, and thinks it's impossible. He feels guilty for feeling bitter. Hisashi's eyebrows rise, his smile going rancid. Excuse you? Pompadour hiccups, unexpecting Hisashi's anger. Sorry sir, it's just... He stutters around his words, before settling on, it's hard to believe. Hisashi's look doesn't soften. Are you even sure he's Nizu's representative, then? Togiki lifts her chin. Moronically, punctuating the insult with a worse, maybe you picked up the wrong guy? Hisashi's expression turns to her and she drops her head, curling in on herself in an instant. Yui and I, he emphasizes, have no tolerance for discrimination. It's a warning with a promise. Hitoshi notices how some students deflate and refrain from letting out a few expletives reactively. Midoriya is Nizu's choice. Or are you insinuating the Chimera would take someone out of pity? The principal of Yui? Hisashi booms. Students flinch at the loudness. It's threatening, and the silence that follows punctuates it. Togiki and Pompadour look down, humiliated. Midoriya is Nizu's personal choice. Nizu, one of the most intelligent specimens alive, with a beguiling reputation for toying around with people for the fuck of it. Nizu, the principal of one of the most promising hero schools in Japan. The principal of Yui. The demon principal of U-fucking-EI. Hitoshi feels like an idiot for allowing the thought to pass his mind subconsciously. Now, your first period teacher will be here in... He glances at his watch. 2 minutes. Behave. I'm headed over to my class. He looks to Midoriya, still obediently waiting for dismissal. And you can take a seat, Midoriya. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Wonderful. Hisashi doesn't leave until Midoriya takes his seat, eyes zeroed in on the plastic handle held to his side. It still looks like a weapon. Your quirk is what defines you. That is an ugly truth that remains so. Midoriya just so happens to be an exception. Hitoshi lets himself hope that it means he can one day be too. Hitoshi really is reckless with hope. Too optimistic. Desperate. Satsutaka. Satsutaka burns with a shame so hot and wild he swears it'll scar. It's bad enough that he was already thoroughly embarrassed. Ridiculed for doing nothing more than being a good person. He was helping the other boy from the dangerous one, the one who could brainwash him, hurt him, the villainous kid. He was doing a good deed, and was repaid in humiliation. To later find out it was at the hand of the quirkless boy. Better yet, someone who's so miserable he was chosen to be Yui's principal's representative out of pity? Surely it had to be out of pity. It's impossible to think that someone quirkless could ever hold such a title otherwise. Impossible. Maybe the principal had a softer heart than the rumors claimed. Satsutaka himself didn't have a fancy quirk. Why else would he end up in Gen Ed of all things? He can manipulate small masses of water if he tries hard enough, but it isn't strong. Despite practicing, his quirk was limited in that it hurt to use. It rendered his joints stiff, and if he overworked himself, it would leave him immobile for a time. But still, he isn't quirkless. He isn't a dying breed, lesser than less, at the bottom of the food chain. He isn't below everyone and everything, the scum of the barrel. A few students, Tokiji and Saori and Yuki, promising friends, kept eyeing him funnily. The defect was in the room too, but they were judging him. Not the defect, but Satsutaka. Because he, a quirkless, made fun of Satsutaka. A fucking quirkless acted like knew everything when he probably couldn't even tie his shoes. Satsutaka fucking took it, like a coward, a wimp, so instead of ridiculing the defect with him, the way it should have been, they were ridiculing him. Skin itching all the wrong ways, the moment the bell rings, signaling lunch, he's stomping over to quirkless. The villain kid behind him startles when Satsutaka slams his palm on his desk. Quirkless flinches too, but it's more subtle. How dare you embarrass me like that? Satsutaka is as noisy as the color of his blush, thinking that confrontation will help the gnawing embarrassment and judgment fade. You're a quirkless. You have no right to make fun of others, like that. Especially not those who were only trying to help you. There's a group of students lingering behind and curious kids pause in the hallway to look at the commotion. The door is open and Satsutaka is loud. He's embarrassed, flushed, and ridiculed. He tries to drown it in his loudness. Quirkless doesn't spare him a second, doesn't bother to meet his eyes. He casually shoves his books back into his backpack and stands up. For a second, Satsutaka thinks he's going to fight him. Satsutaka wants to fight him because he's bound to win. Where Satsutaka is buff and tall, quirkless is tiny and frail, something to step on. But quirkless doesn't raise a fist, doesn't raise his head. He walks away. From Satsutaka. Quirkless. Looks away. But Satsutaka reaches for his shoulder. He fucks up. Quirkless skids forward, Satsutaka's fingers only brushing the collar of his uniform. He spins on his heel and flicks his wrist, the move followed by a loud click. The small plastic thing that he was holding earlier catches the light, reflecting onto the surface of the desk where Tsutswaka still has his palms splayed out. Except that plastic is fucked, matte and dented. It shouldn't reflect light in a sharp glare. He fucks up. Holy shit. Holy shit, he whispers. The knife is glinting, a little warped where the metal meets the handle, and rusty towards the hilt. But the blade is thin, long, sharp, silver lethal. The blade. It's a blade. Never fucking touch me, Quirkless threatens. He takes the point of his blade and drags it along the desk, featherlight. Satsutaka stumbles back, pulling his hands off nanoseconds before Quirkless, suddenly and furiously, stabs it through the wood. It splinters, the knife shaking as it steadies itself. Satsukasa notes that it's less than a millimeter away from where his palms had been splayed. His ego bursts like Quirkless blade cut through it when tears collect in his eyes. If only it went through your fucking palm, Quirkless mutters like he's pouting. He yanks out the knife, dusting it off with his sleeve. He looks up to Satsukasa with sullen, ferocious eyes. The whimpering student flinches under its intensity. Don't fucking forget what I said. Besides, Quirkless adds, walking over to the door, I don't want to catch an kinky motherfucker. Satsutaka should feel mortified. He should feel his heart seize with another wave of embarrassment. Instead, he is flooded with relief. For a moment, for a horrifying second, he swears quirkless Midoriya, Izuku Midoriya, was ready to kill. There's no way he was quirkless, Satsutaka mutters. It isn't to save face. Midoriya's presence has clogged up his lungs and locked his limbs. He can't move, his knees can barely keep him upright. No way, he says a little louder, fear so needled into his face it pricks the faces of the students still around. They must have felt it too, how suffocating it all was. It must have been a lie they came up with. No wonder he was chosen as Nizu's assistant. Because Satsukasa swears up and down that the boy he faced mere seconds ago, that boy wasn't human. Izuku. Izuku leaves the Gen Ed room feeling like someone pissed in his cereal. Poodlehead is white as a sheet, but Izuku is too pissed to feel any sort of satisfaction. Bigots, his everywhere and always. Evil, hate, and people who see Izuku as a monster, see him for who he is, for what he is. A horrible piece of shit. His everywhere and always. For the love of deities, let me have my lunch in peace. Denki is excited to properly introduce his friends to Midoriya. Heroics class was eventful. With the randomness of the selection, and All Might's abysmal choice for a first-day exercise, a lot of groups were overpowered. Denki himself was paired with a cute girl named Jiro with long lobes for ears, her quirk. Much to his chagrin, they'd been pitted against another beautiful, very intelligent girl, Yaoyorozu, and her significantly less attractive and intelligent partner, Mineta. All Might decided, based on Yaoyorozu's placement in the quirk apprehension test, that she'd be paired in two groups to make up for the odd numbers. She'd already proved her capabilities in the first round, which was an incredible battle. She and Uraraka had lost by hair's width, pinned against the walking explosive hazard that was Bakugo and the sharp-minded, granted a little square, Ida. Nonetheless, her quirk is OP as fuck, in Denki's opinion, and so, despite Mineta being less than favorable as a partner, they'd won. They'd triggered Denki's quirk by frightening him, and he'd very stupidly slid atop a textured carpet, throwing him into that awful headspace where he was redundant. Earmuffs made it easy to block off most of Jiro's attacks. Even though he'd lost embarrassingly easily, he still wanted to tell Midoriya about it. Despite his obvious disinterest in heroism, Midoriya is at least somewhat a fan of quirks, with how often he's asked Denki questions about his own. At first, he'd presumed it was because Midoriya was quirkless, and wanted a better understanding of what it was like to be quirked. After getting to know Midoriya, however, he'd felt rather silly for thinking so. Midoriya doesn't see his quirklessness as defective, so entertaining the idea of having a quirk seemed counterintuitive. Midoriya's someone way too badass to mope about things he doesn't have, too badass to waste his time on the what-ifs. At least, in Denki's eyes he is. Denki also swears he's gotten away with murder before. He just gives off the vibe. Ayo, there's a table over there. The boy he'd exchanged numbers with after the entrance exam, Kirishima, nods over to an empty table by a large group of people. Denki shakes his head. Mito wouldn't like it there. Let's sit somewhere a little less crowded. Mito? Shiro raises an eyebrow. Yeah, the dude that'll be tailing us. Denki clarifies dismissively, looking around and spotting a different table at the corner of the cafeteria, which was far more secluded. Perfect. Shit, you mean Nizu's representative? Denki nods non-committally, setting his tray down and taking a seat. Shiro takes the one across from him with Kirishima to their right. Mina takes the one at the head of the table. Denki doesn't know if they've left the seat by him purposefully or not, but he's grateful nonetheless. Midoriya probably won't take too kindly to sitting next to a bunch of people he didn't know. Oh yeah, you guys were pretty buddy-buddy, Mina teases, wiggling her eyebrows. How'd you get friendly with someone like that? Or is it more than friendship? Denki rolls his eyes. He helped me, not die in the entrance exam, so I insisted we exchange numbers. I like to think I grew on him. Like fungus, a quiet voice says, right by Denki's head. He jerks, nearly falling out of his chair. When he turns his head, he meets Midoriya, his face close enough that Denki can see the very faint scar right by his nose bridge. His eyes are alight with amusement. Jesus fucking Christ. Denki holds a hand to his heart, gently thumping Midoriya's chest in reprimand. Nearly killed me there, Mido? Midoriya shrugs before taking the seat by him. Denki sees him nod his head somewhere behind him before a hesitant, tall figure takes the other seat by Midoriya. Well, you've all already met. Denki claps his hands, then asks, but who's that? Hitoshi Shinso, Midoriya answers. Well, it's nice to meet you, dude, Shiro greets with a smile. Where are your lunch trays, by the way? Not hungry. Midoriya looks to Shinso, who shakes his head. And he isn't either. Is there something wrong with him? Does he not speak? Mina, Denki scolds. Shinso stiffens, and Midoriya sends Mina a scathing glare. She yelps and pushes her chair back a little, eyes cast downwards. Midoriya turns to Denki and whispers in his ear, we're going to go outside. Fewer people. I'll see you after school. Denki nods, hiding his disappointment as Midoriya gently nudges Hitoshi's shoulder and they both walk off and out of the cafeteria. Eyes follow them, whispers too. He knows why. Midoriya is scars, bandages and blood. He's textbook bad, with long hair and piercings and a disorderly uniform. People stare at things that stand out to them, even if those very things don't intend to stand out. That was, Shiro trails off, interesting. You seriously made friends with him? Mina squeaks, I thought I was about to shit myself. Because you asked a rude question, Denki retorts, doing his best to refrain from rolling his eyes. Kirishima hugs his arms like he's shivering. Still man, that look wasn't even directed at me and I felt like I'd been dunked in a bucket of ice or something. Kinda glad he passed out when I caught him during the entrance exam. You guys just haven't got to know him yet, Denki frowns. He really isn't that bad. I don't know if I want to get to know him. Mina looks away. He's scary. He can be, Denki won't deny it. Midoriya's glare is fierce and he looks like he runs hell himself as its king, but he's so much more. He helped Denki when he wasn't obligated to. He fucking saved him. He watches over this little quirkless kid, treats him like a little brother, and boasts about him through texts with Denki on occasion. It's cute, reading through his texts and the occasional video of this black-haired, starry-eyed child Midoriya so clearly loves. He took in this stranger who was struggling. Denki's met him briefly. If he's remembering correctly, he goes by Dabi. Midoriya sheltered him. He gave him hope and a new life. He responds to Denki's memes and listens to him rant about his hyperfixations no matter how absurd. He actually listens, engages in conversation and makes him feel heard. Yeah, he's a little crude and blunt and, sometimes, really scary. But he isn't always. He's so much more. It's a shame people refuse to see it. Izuku. Sorry, Shinso stutters. They're outside, seated under a large, old tree with thick flourishing green leaves in the wake of spring. Izuku looks at him. Sorry for what? Your friends? Cam is my friend. Izuku cuts him off, and I'm the one who said to walk away. What she asked was rude and I didn't like it. Shinso looks at Izuku like he's a personified mystery. I don't you understand you. Izuku doesn't have a response to that, so he gives none. Lunch break isn't too long and the fourth period is starting soon. He doesn't see 1A for the rest of the day. I see. Can't speak around crowds or too many strangers, Shinso tells him after a lapsing silence. It's a thing I'm working on. He doesn't elaborate, doesn't need to. Izuku thinks he's like him, in some way. Anxious to speak, biting your tongue in fear of someone ripping it out with their bare hands and laughing in your face as you choke on your blood. Or maybe he's different, maybe he's worse, maybe his tongue's already been cut off and he's learning to speak around it, despite it. Are your teeth like that, by the way? Shinso leans on his arms. USSS said you didn't have a Q quirk but they're, like, uncharacteristically sharp? I had them filed, Izuku answers honestly. A subconscious part of him smiles. Shinso treats his quirk, his lack of quirk, like nothing. He likes that. You had them filed? Izuku nods, licking his manufactured canines. My teeth are now sensitive to the cold. He'd had them filed to just before the nerve, thinned out the protective layers to drill them into points sharp enough to draw blood. To tear flesh. Why would you do that? My lover likes it rough, Izuku responds, straight-faced. Shinso stares at him, and Izuku's expression doesn't change save for a tiny smirk. Shinso scoffs, funny. At the end of the school day, Izuku heads to Nizu's office. He greets Shinso goodbye and ignores the way he's stared at by students and staff alike as he walks down the halls. He doesn't knock, the door swings open, and Nizu is waiting, perfect smile and all. Aizawa is there too. Hello, Midoriya. Izuku bows and says nothing, taking the empty seat across from Aizawa. He's offered a cup of tea and shakes his head. The familiar pattern is uncomfortable. Izuku hates familiarity. He hates rigidness and perfection and rules, being someone so impulsive and thick-headed and stubborn and desperate. Well, I suppose I should ask, how was your first day? Fucking shit. Someone tried to trip me on the way to 4th. A few of Aizawa's students kept staring at me when I passed them in the halls, talking about how scary I looked. A guy with the stupidest fucking hairstyle I've ever seen tried to start something with me after I embarrassed him for discriminating against a kid with a brainwashing quirk. I then had to eat lunch with said kid outside because my one friend made friends with uncomfortable people. Also, when I went to Aizawa's class this morning, a kid I knew in fucking elementary school tried to light my face on fire. So, again, really fucking shit? Fine. I saw you walking around with that purple-haired kid from your class. Hitoshi Shinso, yes? Yeah. Seems you have trouble fitting in though. Aizawa told me you left quite the impression in his class that morning. Did I? Izuku's tone is dry and bland. Why, it's not every day that a student threatens his classmates with a switchblade. Nizu stares pointedly at Midoriya's pockets, where the tip of the holder peeks through. Part of the deal was I get to carry a choice of weapon around. Be grateful I didn't choose a fucking gun. Guns are illegal. Izuku looks at Aizawa. And? When did legality become pressing or relevant? Why does legality matter when the law is only enforced to oppress? No law demands morality, no law promises justice. So who gives a flying rat's ass about something as impudent as legality? Never mind, never mind. Nizu hops onto their desk. I just came for your initial analysis of Aizawa's students and then you're free to leave. Don't fret. Meetings like these won't be frequent. Izuku pulls up the sleeves of his blazer. Aizawa keeps eyeing his bandages, has been since he walked into the classroom that morning, and digs through his near-empty backpack for his single binder. It's torn and dirty with one of the metal clasps on the inside broken, but it's what he has. Akatani scribbled a few sketches onto the front and Dabi drew a rudimentary illustration of a dick with hairs, veins and all. Izuku likes it, likes that it's personal and his. He hands Nizu 19 individual papers, all with quick-written, fairly brief profiles of the 1A students. When did you have time to prepare these? Nizu asks, pawing through each paper, eyes darting over the writing and drawings with impressive speed. Class. Nizu turns their gaze away from the papers and to Izuku, with that same, pretty, perfect porcelain smile. Thank you for this. Aizawa mentioned he'd like to speak with you afterwards, so feel free to talk to him once you leave. You're both dismissed. Izuku gives no reaction to the request, placing back his folder into his bag and walking out, Aizawa at his heel. He wonders if he'll slap him or take a ruler to his knuckles until the skin splits. Maybe he'll yell at him, call him a nuisance, a waste of space. It's most likely because of what he said that morning, calling his methods of teaching damning. Despite Izuku's initial impression of him, there's a chance he was far crueler than Ayla and her women, the type of cruelty you see in the bastards those women trick, the ones who walk home to their loving partners and innocent children smelling of vomit, sweat, and someone else's cheap perfume. They stop at an empty corridor underneath a stairwell. It's hard for the students still lingering behind to see them. Izuku shoves his hands into his pockets and leans against the wall, hyper-aware of his footing, attempting nonchalance. His fingers graze the plastic handle of his pocket knife. Could I flick it open without him knowing? Noting Aizawa's frustratingly watchful gaze, Izuku settles on rubbing at his bandages, chafing the skin and irritating the healing wounds. His heart rate slows. It's about what you told me this morning. Aizawa starts when Izuku says nothing. I would like to hear your opinion on the matter. Izuku's relaxed stance falters, his feet turning inwards. Opinion? You said my quirk apprehension test was biased and the harsh consequences for failing would paint me as untrustworthy, even if the consequences were a lie. Above all, I'm a teacher, so trust is a foundation that I need to build. I want to know what you think I should do and what problems you have with what I am already doing. Will you hit me? That wipes off the apathetic, inquisitive look on Aizawa's face. I'm sorry? Will you hit me? Izuku repeats, nonplussed. If I give my opinion, will I face any actual harsh consequences? Aizawa stares at him. Contemplative? Confused? He's looking for something and Izuku can't tell what it is, can't tell if he finds it. No, he finally says, looking away briefly. No, you won't face any consequences. Izuku tilts his head, unbelieving. Will you hit me if I don't answer? What? Kid, no Aizawa cuts himself off, breathes from his chest, and tries again. This is a question I'm asking of you directly. You're not obligated to answer, though it would be appreciated, and I won't punish you for answering, especially when I asked. Izuku still doesn't believe it. Why should he? Nonetheless, he answers. He'll be hit either way. Fine. He steals himself. Regardless of your intention, the second you told the students the person who failed would be expelled, you inadvertently told them that what they grew up believing was true. That their quirk is what defines them and their success. You could see it in their behavior. Students with quirks that were objectively more powerful and versatile were confident in their positions, and students with quirks better suited for more specific operations were about 3 seconds away from shitting themselves. All you really did at that moment was confirm to your students that those with stronger quirks will always be first. And if it was him, quirkless, frail, pathetic little him, you made yourself out to be another victim to the quirkist ideologies that run rampant in our systems. You call it a logical ruse, but that doesn't change the initial moment of distrust at first impression. If we were to disregard other factors and solely focus on the impression you left during your quirk apprehension test, students like Cam and Jiro will be far less inclined to come to you for help than, say, students like Yaoyorozu. And if it was him, every obstacle he lost limbs climbing over wouldn't have mattered. Kids like him will never best kids like Katsuki when stripped to nothing but their raw, intrinsic strengths. There's a difference between strict and unfair. You being known as Yui's Hellspawn teacher for your draconian demeanor is fine. You being known as the Hellspawn teacher for imposing or encouraging quirkism is different. No matter how trained someone is, students like Hagakure will never surpass students like Todoroki on quirk strength alone. He knows because there's students like him, students who cry at night because they dream too big, who sweat as they try and fail to keep up. Aizawa blinks, the only reaction to Izuku's spiel. Izuku's tongue feels dry, so used to shutting up, staying quiet, and giving one-word answers. Thank you for that, I'll take into account what you've said. Aizawa raises a hand to adjust his scarf. Izuku flinches. Aizawa catches it. Of course, he catches it. You can leave, kid. Go home and rest. Despite his confusion, Izuku bows and walks away. Why didn't he hit me? Shota. Izuku Midoriya is dangerous. Different from villains and monsters and people who hurt for the sake of hurting. Different from loan sharks and rich men on pedestals and Yakuza leaders. Different from petty thieves and muggers and drunks. His dangerous is different. He does not value life, adorning the eyes of a killer, the glare of someone who's been in death's grasp and grinned. Shota thinks only 2 thoughts. Izuku Midoriya loves death. Izuku Midoriya has conquered it. What a paradox. Izuku. What was that about? Kaminari asks as they both head to the station. They live in different areas so they take different trains home, but it's at the same stop, so they walk together. Nizu just wanted profiles on your classmates, Izuku answers, kicking the dirt, eyes darting to the sky, to the grass and the pavement and the cars on the road. It's nice to take it all in sometimes. Ooh, you wrote profiles? Can I ask what you wrote about me? Unless it's private. I totally understand if it's private and you can't say anything. It's nothing detailed, I just gave an overview of your quirks from what I saw and read in your files. He notices Kaminari tense a little, and adds, though I was only given access to your quirk registry. Kaminari relaxes. Then I made assumptions about your behaviors based on your interactions with each other. Yours was the easiest to compile since I've already known you for the better part of 2 months. So, what did you say? Energetic, loud, and extroverted, Izuku smirks. Jumpy, easily frightened, eerily similar to a wild kitten. Kaminari gasps in mock offense. How dare you? Kittens are adorable, Izuku rebukes. I literally paid you the highest compliment. Kaminari blushes softly. Okay, so what else? I've been told I can be rather annoying and a little, scatterbrained? I'm also pretty stupid and I space out a lot. I know I tend to interrupt people sometimes and I feel really bad about it. Kaminari, you aren't annoying. Izuku rolls his eyes. And I'm not going to talk about how you interrupt people in a profile. You're not stupid either. I don't think most people would agree with you on the last point, Kaminari argues, quickly following it with, so, is that all you said, then? The cat thing? You know I didn't actually write that you have the mannerisms of a cat on speed, right? You didn't? Izuku spares him a dry look and Kaminari sheepishly shrugs his shoulders. Come on, I want to know, he whines. What did you say? Izuku sighs, slipping off his backpack and rummaging for his binder. Kaminari laughs at the jokes written in black marker on the cover as Izuku flips through the pages, finally landing on Kaminari's. He'd made copies, worried that the teachers would burn his work and then blame him for not making it fireproof, worried that students would soak the papers and bleed the ink and blame him for not making it waterproof too. Kaminari Denki. June 29, 20XX. Folks. Gold eyes. Dark blonde hair with black, lightning bolt-shaped highlights. Quirk, electrification. Rename? Quirk seems to be more similar to a generator. Burns out the user at overuse. Current voltage limit before overuse and incapacitation is estimated at 1 million volts. Etches Lichtenberg scars into skin. Suggestions. Have the user dispel small amounts of energy into external outputs. IDAD batteries, generators. Have the user learn to dispel currents in smaller outbursts of energy to keep nerves from frying. Characteristics. Extroverted, sociable. Easily distracted, unfocused. Anxious, jumpy. Energetic. Likely influenced by quirk. Observation notes, characteristics. Kaminari has an affinity for the humanities and arts but struggles in STEM subjects. Consider devising a personalized study plan more focused on repetition, patterns, and creating relationships between concepts and everyday life. Will probably work better in practical applications than standardized testing. Kaminari tends to fidget a lot and has difficulty keeping still. Permitting the use of fidget toys to keep stimulated is heavily suggested. Kaminari reacts violently to his environment. He might suffer from sensory issues and constant episodes of overstimulation. Should be allowed to step out of a room and into a dark, quiet space during episodes. At his current level, Kaminari should not overexert himself when practicing his quirk or try and breach his limits. Long-term drawbacks of electricity-based quirks have statically proven to be near fatal. This can change once Kaminari is able to reach his current maximum limit, 1 million volts. Without incapacitation. Need to observe him on the field and in training too for further evaluation. Seems to work better in group settings. Quirk is always active. Observation notes, appearance. Eyes glow when quirk is in use. Hair stands on ends due to a continuous release of static. Clothes tend to not touch skin when nervous and static increases. Lichtenberg scars pink when quirk is in use, burn red when burnt out. Personal observations/subjective notes. Very kind and accommodating to others. Does not take things seriously, tends to turn subjects into jokes even if the subjects are serious. Sees himself as comic relief. Might feel a sense of responsibility for that role or was sought after as a kid to help relieve tension in a group. Is loud and boisterous, cheery. Optimistic? Tries to be. Feels comfortable to be around and comes off as easy to trust. Note, would make for a good double agent/spy if deceptive skills can be worked on. Easy to read. Izuku. Bro, this is... Kaminari gently closes the binder and hands it back to Izuku, eyes glittering. How'd you guess I get overstimulated and have sensory issues? I don't think I've ever had an episode around you. Because it happens to me, Izuku replies, and you struggle with anxiety. I do too. Izuku looks at Kaminari, whose eyebrows are furrowed. Is it unexpected? You just seem really calm, I guess. Izuku gives no reply, and so Kaminari asks, you think I'm trustworthy? Izuku turns on his heel so he's walking backwards, mindful of running into bystanders. You know I'm quirkless, and yet you didn't tell any of your classmates. Right? Kaminari shakes his head. I didn't. You didn't shank me when I told you I was quirkless. You helped me earlier with Katsuki and during the entrance exam when I hit the concrete. You've already made friends with quite a few of your classmates, and not once since I've met you have you ever been mean or lied outwardly. You've given me no reason to not trust you. So you trust me? Izuku thinks about it. He doesn't trust, he doesn't give or take, he survives. He thinks he could tell Kaminari a secret, and he thinks Kaminari would keep it. But trust is more than that. Izuku's careless with his life, with himself. He's a monster, and so he's worth nothing, worth better dead. He'd take a bullet for a villain for the sake of feeling himself bleed out on the sidewalk. Izuku doesn't trust. Yet he thinks he wouldn't take the bullet if Kaminari asked him not to. I think I do. Kaminari smiles, not the wide, goofy smile he wears so easily, but a smaller, gentler one. Izuku doesn't trust, he survives. They cannot coincide. They reach the train station. Kaminari's train is only a minute away. Hey Mito, he questions. Izuku tilts his head to show he's listening. Call me Denki. Izuku doesn't trust, but he thinks he can tell Kaminari a secret, and that Kaminari would keep. Call me Izuku. The train comes and the doors open. See you tomorrow, Izuku. Izuku. Tomorrow, Denki. Izuku doesn't trust, he'd take a bullet for a stranger if it meant bleeding out on the gray pavement he walks on. Izuku doesn't trust, but he wouldn't take those bullets if Kaminari asked him not to. It's a quiet revelation, one that he buries in his lungs, caged by his broken ribs and heart of black blood. He'd live for him. How terrifying. I'm leaving, Izuku tells Dabi, slipping on a hoodie. The people around this neighborhood, from the homeless men to the local prostitutes, know him by aliases and nicknames. They know him more intimately by his scars and the knives slipped into the holsters strapped around his thighs. Some even know the cock of his gun, a Glock 19 he bled for. Those people seldom remember his face over the intense fear of a bullet whirring past them and grazing their cheek. He snags the packet of cigarettes and a lighter. Dabi gives him a look. You're addicted? I'm not, Izuku denies, flicking open a flame. I can stop and you know that damn well. Why don't you? Because I don't want to. Dabi's eyes trail to his legs, the lines that peek past the hem of his skirt. You're addicted? Izuku hears it even if he doesn't say it aloud, again. He doesn't refute it, can't. Izuku may not be a slave to every addiction, but this vice has gripped his wrist so tight the bruises left there are like permanent tattoos on his skin. This addiction is one of his few truths. And what did it matter? He was alive, no. Besides, it is her his skin, her his blades, her his hands, her his blood. If Izuku is a mass of decay who needs to bleed, let him bleed. Like mother like son, no? Is that not another desperate chase he refuses to let go of? To bleed like she bled, to cry like she cried, to lose it all in an instant and survive a corpse. To die, 3 times and 4 times and 6 times over, again and again. I'm leaving, he says again, dignifying no response. Dabi huffs, you got your phone on you? His phone is ancient, quite literally, old and broken and fished out from the local dump by Trash Beach. He waves it at Dabi. Stay safe. Suck a dick. Himiko. Himiko is hungry. Crouched behind an alleyway dumpster, arms wrapped around her stomach because it cramps, she's so fucking hungry it hurts. She hadn't eaten anything in 5 days. The local butcher gave her a slab of rare cooked meat that she couldn't help but devour, and she'd felt so guilty afterwards she'd knelt over the dumpster and thrown it all back up. God, she's so hungry. Her knuckles are scabbed and her stomach is bloated and her cheeks are flushed red. She's so fucking hungry she can't eat. But trying to satiate hunger without food is a difficult feat, and Toga's taken to her favorite method of doing so as of late. The alleyways are always the best at night. People are stupid, reckless, and violent. The local clubs are full of drunks who are just angry at the world, and when they're kicked out for harassing the guests and shattering the glasses, they're still so full of chicken shit rage. There's nothing more promising to her gluttony than stupid, angry, and intoxicated men looking for a fight. And when they do, eventually, take their anger out on each other, it's always sloppy and weak and pathetic to watch. They're disoriented and sweaty and tired, delusional. They trip and fall and scrape their knees and break each other's noses, always smelling, so faintly, of blood. It's such a sweet, rich, full aroma. It's so seductive all Himiko can think about is bathing it, drenching her hair and staining her skin. It makes her wet with want, makes her knees buckle with lust. It's worth every moment she spends crouched in those alleyways, every moment she's subjecting herself to danger. Himiko was always told blood smelt of rust and iron. To her, though, it smells like flowers. It smells like something she should lather in. She finds herself peeking behind dumpsters just for that so soft smell. She's aware it's borderline masochistic, like dangling fruit in front of a starving child but forbidding them to taste. Her instincts scream at her to ravage, a lion deprived of its prey for too long. Himiko knows better than to listen to those primal instincts. Himiko is not vile. Only vile creatures give in to their savage urges. Normal people, good people, do not crave the syrupy texture of blood. They are not fascinated with the prettiness of its red or the way it looks on others spilling from their gaping wounds. Villains are those who thirst to lick the red off others' skin, to cut them open for more. Himiko can't be evil, shouldn't be. And should she ever blasphemously give in to the temptation, she will cleanse herself of that evil with her reddened knuckles and burning throat. Today is different. Rather than the angry drunkards who taint the smell of blood, she comes across two sober people. They're fighting. A girl with long green hair in a dirty brown skirt and a worn yellow hoodie holds her fists up against a much older-looking, taller man with wisping gray hair and a multicolored beard. The man is lanky, with knobby knees and sharp elbows and hollow cheeks. The girl is leaner than him, still thin but with muscles in her calves and confidence in her leer. "Fuck off," the girl barks, falling into a boxing stance. She has a funny voice, deeper than Himiko anticipated, a little rough but young. "You should have known better than to show your face again after the shit you pulled, Pretty." Pretty? Is that her name? What shit? You think I wouldn't notice missing an entire bottle of sake? Pretty raises an eyebrow. "Sorry you can't take care of your shit, fuckface, but that wasn't me. Just like last time wasn't you, right?" The man chuckles bitterly. "You're dead." Without warning, the man lunges forward, an agile, long leg striking out and aiming a kick for Pretty's abdomen. Pretty steps back, missing the heel of the man's boot by a couple of centimeters. There's no moment to recuperate or reorient herself, as the man strikes again, this time with his elbow. It lightly grazes Pretty's chin as she bends backwards, falling into a bridge. Himiko almost claps when she kicks upwards, right at the man's throat, amazed. He chokes, losing his footing as Pretty effortlessly uses the momentum to right herself straight. I really wanted to keep things clean, you geezer. You can ask around, I don't steal around my area." Through a round of coughs, the man retorts, "You think I believe those high and mighty words, skank? You should have been put down the second you got here." Pretty casually slips a hand in the pocket of her hoodie, smirking sardonically but otherwise remaining quiet. The man, egged on, tries to strike again. He's sloppier than the first time, impulsive as opposed to calculated. Himiko sees the blade before he does, the rust reflecting in the artificial orange of the flickering street lights above them. When the man aims for another kick, Pretty is anticipating it. The knife slices through the man's calf, soaking the material of his loose-fitting pants and tearing through the fabric. The man screams. He trips, finding his balance at the last second. The blood starts pooling under him and Himiko inhales deeply, her cramps subsiding into more of a dull ache. She feels her legs quiver and cheeks go red, eyes squinting into slits and body aching with anticipation. It's been too long since she's been around so much blood. Jesus fucking Christ. Pretty isn't satisfied. She pounces, digging the knife into the same wound and twisting. Himiko can hear the squelch of flesh being torn as the man continues to scream, falling on his ass. He tries to pull away and it only digs the knife in further, his voice cracking and splitting, his throat already raw. Still, he screams and pleads like the heavens will hear him and grant him mercy. Himiko doesn't think he's a religious man. You should have fucked off, Pretty smiles, crazed. It's a familiar smile, the same one she wears when she comes across dead birds and drinks their blood. The same smile she wears when she forgoes obedience and drinks, licks and laps. Before the disgust, hate and guilt eat away at the split-second euphoria, and she's throwing it all up again. There's blood on Pretty's sleeves, splattered on her hoodie, and flecked on the skin of her leg. She glances at it with as much care as she has for the man bleeding before her. The knife pulls out with another sickening squelch. Pretty stands up, staring down at the man and deliberately stomping into the pooling blood. It flecks into the man's open mouth. Pretty chuckles mirthfully as he gags on it. Jealousy's never looked so green on Himiko. Go! The man can't get up, so he hauls himself away on the back of his hands, a thick trail of blood dragging behind him. Pretty waits until he's turned the corner, out of Himiko's line of sight, to walk away. Blood. Himiko can't shake the itch, it's crawling up her arms and around her legs, trailing down her spine. Her eyes dilate, the smell making her head spin, dizzy with ravenous hunger. Her knees give out, the pain of starvation turning her into sludge. She crawls, scrapes her skin, sits in the blood and lets it soak into her stockings and skirt. The puddle is large, thick and so much. She pulls back the sleeve of her sweater, feeling the rough texture of the alleyway floor as she flattens her palm into the puddle. It's deep enough that the blood inches past her hand and through the space in her fingers. Nothing but crimson drips down her wrist and to her elbow, drowning the material of her sweater when she lifts her arm to the sky to marvel at it. It's a shade of red so dark it could be mistaken for black under the moonlight. Her tongue darts out, mindless, licking up her middle finger. Oh gods, oh mercy, oh Satan. Now a Neanderthal in both mind and body, she gives in. She cuts her tongue on the asphalt when she leans into the puddle, licking and lapping, her caving stomach asking for more and more and more, insatiable and greedy. Like a proper starved bitch, she licks what she can off her hands and arms and wipes off the blood on her knees, pricks her thumbs where they press into the fangs of her teeth. It coats her lower face, the tip of her nose, dripping down her chin, collarbone and the curve of her breast. She's sick. She's deranged. She needs to be locked up, put away with her urges, away from the sensual allure of blood. She giggles as she licks from her elbow to her palm, and smiles as she sucks on her fingers. Her expression is maddening, blissful. It's of a weak girl with ribs to count satiating starvation so terrible it eats away her hunger. When there's nothing left to lap and suck at, she stands up. She stares at her skirt, at her stockings and shoes. She brings a hand to her face and wipes the blood off her nose. Disgusting. The feeling of rancor and revulsion slaps her with the familiarity of a pale hand adorning an opal ring. I birthed something inhuman, something wrong. How distasteful, how horrid, how monstrous. That is not my daughter. I refuse to claim that villain as my blood. What is that? What are you doing? Spit it out, throw it back up? See these scars on your knuckles, they're a reminder. Every time you do this atrocious thing, you fix it. You fix it no matter how bad it hurts. That is your punishment, Himiko, your punishment for being born. Himiko's legs take her to the nearest dumpster like clockwork. It's too tall for her, she's only 5'0", so she stands atop boxes full of broken bottles and leftover food like a makeshift stool. It's gross, yes, but Himiko is a million times more disgusting. She keels over, the lid of the dumpster pressing against her ribs. The smell is rancid, but it makes it easier to gag so she doesn't hold her breath. She takes her fingers to her mouth. The more she does it, the harder it gets, the less she eats, the harder it gets, and the realization that it'll never get easier makes her cry. She cuts the roof of her mouth where her knuckles are pressed, feeling the familiar sting. Her stomach heaves, but she doesn't pull her fingers out, spitting out the phlegm and saliva until the familiar burn is crawling its way up her throat. She pulls her fingers back to vomit, and she does it again and again until the only thing she heaves is air. She falls against one of the boxes, her energy depleted by the second, her insides burning. She doesn't know if she throws up the blood she drinks or the blood in her veins. She's thirsty again. The sound of footsteps alerts her, but she's far too weak to do more than turn her head. It's Pretty. Pretty walks over to her, frowning. Why did you do that? Do what? Himiko's voice is hoarse, rough from the tears in her throat and the cuts on her knuckles. Why did you make yourself throw up? Oh. Himiko smiles lazily. You saw me? Did you see me do that too? She points to the blood in the alleyway. It looks like another aftermath of a fight, to anyone else, but Himiko knows better. Pretty does too, it seems. I did. Pretty's frown deepens, and this close Himiko can see the gleam of piercings and scars on her face. Some of them are healed over cuts, others old and thick. Her head is spinning again, and she drops her hand because it feels a little too heavy. So you know why I did it. Only evil people crave blood. She brings her knees to her chest. Thank you for coming, Pretty. I'm going to sleep now. She faints. Izuku. Izuku just wanted his lighter. He swears he just wanted his lighter. Tamura. Heavy multiplication x heavy multiplication x heavy multiplication x. Tamura's skin is irritated, bleeding, scabbed over and stinging unpleasantly. He drags his nails down his neck, his collarbones and arms and everywhere. It's all so irritating. The article in front of him is laid bare, headline in bold, black letters. All Might, new teacher at Yui. Kurogyari is behind the counter, wiping methodically at a single glass cup. They play the role of bartender flawlessly, so flawlessly they could trick deities. Tamura knows they're no more than a broken puppet on strings. They're mist, a mode of transport, a slave at his beck and call. Tamura never felt particularly proud about how willingly Kurogyari obeys his command, though. It makes him feel very young, knowing the only reason they listen to him is because they do not know anything else. He's a teacher? He questions quietly. His nails, long and sharp and brittle, scratch harder and harder. Dead skin dusts the air like snow. He's a fucking teacher, he repeats, hysterical. He scratches harder and harder, numb to wounds he digs into. Harder. Who does he think he is? Tamura glances at Kuwajiri and back at the paper, back and forth as his temper rises and rises and his nails continue to scratch. He laughs, a loud and croaky noise so pitiful his eardrums thrum to bleed. Young master, Kurogyari says, placing down the glass and fetching yet another. They're untouched, save for the cup by Tamura himself. Kurogyari wipes them like they've been sitting in mud. Please, do not scratch. Tamura drops his hands. His nails are black and yellow, the nail of his ring finger torn off entirely. Skin and blood are caked under them, and when he trails the flat of his finger against the incessant itch, it comes back coated in crimson. Folding his arms across his lap, Tamura directs all his attention at his butler. Even with father on his face, Kurogyari meets his eyes. Truly, they are but a mindless zombie, stripped of everything that once made them alive. Again, it gives Tamura no feelings of comfort. Kurogyari will never betray them because they can't, not because they value Tamura or master's word. Tamura rereads the headlines 5 times before an idea comes to mind. He smirks, feeling his lips bleed at the strain of movement. Say, what do you think will happen when the all-knowing symbols of peace is finally snuffed out by villains? Izuku. Izuku's tired. Not the everlasting, indescribable fatigue that he's grown apathetic to, but drained. Himiko Toga is quite the character. Last night, white hourglass. Tuya knows Izuku isn't merciful. He comes home trailing bloody footprints, sporting a wicked smile, and smelling like rot and decay. It's a smell worse than death. Not a literal smell that makes you turn your nose. Rather, the smell that trails after him is like smelling tension, or tasting hatred, sharp and bitter senses that are impossible to escape, that no amount of sugar or perfume can hide. Tuya thinks death probably smells better. Death is gracious. It can smell like love for, despite being unforgiving and relentless and permanent, death prioritizes mercy. Izuku doesn't, will never. He carries a stench of rot and decay because he chooses to sink his fingers underneath people's skin and peel it off but leave them breathing, whereas death would cut off their heads and take away that pain. That being said, he is, however, kind. Knowing of him, it's unfathomable. The people of their neighborhood who haven't spoken to Izuku would probably laugh if Tuya told them the first word he'd use to describe Izuku was kind. Yet, to Tuya, who's lived with him for over a year, it's impossible to think of him otherwise. Tuya believes that in any and every universe, even where the sun sets west and the skies are always green, Izuku is kind. That's why when he walks in with a tiny blonde girl held in a bridal carry, soaked in blood and bile, he doesn't question him. Izuku is kind. A towel with dye stains is laid on the couch, and the girl is placed on top. What the fuck happened? Tuya asks, none too subtly scanning the girl for injuries. Got into a fight with Scruffy from the liquor store and gave him a few good gashes? He rubs his blade, coated in dry blood, on his sleeve. A fruitless effort seeing as how the sleeve is stiff with blood too. He bled a shit ton and ran away. I dropped my lighter during the fight though. When I went to get it back, Crazy over here was licking the blood right off the alleyway floor. There was, like, a large puddle and she was kneeling it in. Tuya steps away from the girl. And you brought her here? I've seen and dealt with way worse than some tiny-ass girl with a blood kink. I was going to leave her to her mercies. She seemed to be enjoying herself and I wasn't in any mood to interrupt. I would have just waited until she licked it all up and left. But then the chick walked over to the dumpster and vomited it up. Hand down her throat and all. Her legs gave out after and she looked on the verge of collapse. When I went up and asked her why she did that, she said, and I fucking quote, only evil people crave blood before passing out from, what I'm going to assume, is hunger. Oh damn. Yeah. Izuku glowers. She's probably not just some whack job who likes licking asphalt. I mean, look at her, the girl looks starved. And when I picked her up, she was lighter than my mum, and Inko weighed about as much as a damp blanket before she kicked it. Shit, you think she was controlled or something? I mean, drinking blood is a little out there, Tuya comments, deliberately glossing over the mention of Izuku's mother. He rarely talks about her, and when he does, it's always emotive. Usually sad, sometimes bitter, other times in mourning. All Tuya knows is that Izuku went homeless after she died, and has been living in their neighborhood and squatting at their place since. I'm guessing it's her quirk. A lust for blood isn't something kids my age just have without some type of predisposition, like coercion or cult shit, or a quirk drawback. Tuya finishes the train of thought. Izuku hums, walking over to the kitchen counter and filling a glass of water. Check her knuckles? Tuya does. Her hands rested delicately atop her chest, caked in as much blood as the rest of her. Still, her expression is serene. With a grimace, he gently flakes off the crusted blood. Her knuckles are horribly scabbed and scarred, the skin still irritated, pulled and torn. They aren't the knuckles of a fighter. The scars aren't as brutal as the ones Izuku bears. Still, her hands are rougher and bloodier than they should be. It's disheartening. That's years of damage. Shot in the dark is that Crazy has some kind of bulimia. Anorexia too, You don't get gaunt like that just starving off blood. Could just be homeless, Tuya points out. That's why I said probably. We just gotta wake her up to ask. And how are we going to do that? If it weren't for the rise and fall of her chest, I'd guess she was dead. Easy. Izuku takes a sip of his water. I'll call Kumiko. Tuya's thoughts come to a screeching halt. Izuku's looking at him directly. It had taken so long, so fucking long to get him to meet his eyes. Won't she wake up before then? Tuya groans, aware and uncaring of how childish it sounds. Maybe, Izuku agrees, but it's always best to be safe. This girl has been forcing herself to throw up for years. Her scars are aged. She probably has unhealed tears in her. Throat that she'd never been conscious of because she throws up blood. Cuts on the roof of her mouth too, weak teeth. I get it, Tuya moans, casting the girl a look. She looks like the perfect picture of a depraved artist. Good. Izuku rolls his eyes. Anyway, it's your fault she's so aggravated with your whole fucking existence. Literally how? When she was taking care of you last February, you irritated your stitches, refused to take care of yourself, and yelled at her every visit. Because she visited so goddamn often. Anyone would be fucking bothered. Izuku gives him an unimpressed look. Jesus fuck, fine. Just call her already. Himiko. She's finally waking up, an unfamiliar voice says. Himiko blinks. The ceiling that greets her is made of old tiles, spiderweb cracks running along the sides. Her stomach isn't hurting. She looks down. She's lying in a cot, the twin of a hospital bed but smaller, dingier and stained. Her stomach isn't screaming. Wah? She gags, throat dry. She shifts and winces, finally taking notice of the 4 in her arm. Her eyes follow it to a bag of thick red, dark blood. It's being pumped into her. She yelps, pulling her arm in an attempt to yank it out. A scarred hand wraps itself around her wrist, leaning into her to keep her steady. She writhes uselessly. Don't, they order. It's wrong, she counters, the response rolling off her tongue. Practiced and perfect. Her voice grates her ears. The person holding her down uses their free hand to tilt a glass to her lips. She swallows obediently, parched. She repeats, it's wrong. No, it isn't, the unfamiliar voice interjects. A feminine face with severe features and hair up to her ears in a blunt cut walks into Toga's line of vision. Her curvy figure is hugged by a white lab coat and a nice, maroon blouse, unfitting in this shabby mockery of a clinic. You're suffering from severe nutrient deficiency and your body has rejected all other nutrient bags. Blood works the best. Then let my body reject it, Toga argues. That would kill you, the woman sighs. Now wait 1 second while I take out this 4. It's then Himiko notices a second 4 protruding from the veins in her hands. It's connected to a second bag of blood. She stops fidgeting, finding reprieve in having at least one of these bags out of her system. Good. She nods to the person on Himiko's left, the one who grabbed her wrist earlier and held her down. Himiko turns her head, hiccuping in surprise when recognizes the girl whom she stumbled upon before passing out. Under the brighter, yellowing lights of the room, her scars and piercings are far starker. When Himiko's eyes drift down to take in the rest of her, she notes the tens, maybe hundreds, of scars that litter her thighs, stopping at her knee. Whoa, holy fuck. That's Izuku, the woman says, noting Himiko's focus. He caught you before you passed out. Do you remember that? Himiko nods. First, can I know your name? Where am I? Himiko asks, disregarding the question. Someone else snorts. Himiko whips her head to a dude in a beanie and black, no-sleeve zip-up, tattoos crawling up their neck and down an arm. They're resting on the couch, head turned to the ceiling, eyes fluttered closed. Ah yes, that's Dabi, the woman frowns. He's Izuku's roommate. Please, don't mind him. Yeah, whatever. Dabi peels open an eye. They're a vibrant turquoise, reminding Himiko of the first flicker of a ferocious, kindling fire. Izuku's eyes are bright too, large, blank pools of toxic waste. She imagines souls trapped behind them, raging and screaming and begging to be let out. They look like the kind of people with demons who'd go against God. Anyways, the woman bows and introduces herself. I'm Kumiko, a local doctor who works around these neighborhoods. You were taken to me after passing out from starvation and severe malnutrition. Oh, now, how should I address you? Himiko. Himiko smiles. Himiko Toga. Well, Himiko, could you please explain to me exactly what you remember happening before you passed out? As far as you can remember. Well, I was hungry. Actually, I'm kinda always hungry, except for now, which is kinda weird. I'm usually so hungry it, hurts a lot, but right now I'm not in any pain. Weird, right? Anyway, so at the time I was hungry, starving hungry. And, so when I'm hungry I usually look around for people fighting. Usually, they're drunks who have been kicked out of bars. They're super sloppy and smell, but they're clumsy. Well, when they... Himiko, dear, Kumiko's gentle voice coaxes her. She comes up to take her hand. She hadn't noticed that they'd wrapped her knuckles snugly. It's uncomfortable. We just want to hear what happened. I promise, whatever you're going to tell me won't hold a candlelight to the shit those two have done in the years that I've known them. She nods to Dabi and Izuku, the former offering a sleazy look and the latter a crooked grin. I swear their rap sheets could fill up a dictionary, so please, continue. Okay, Himiko starts nervously, finding comfort in gently squeezing Kumiko's fingers. So, when they're clumsy, sometimes they bleed. Usually not much, just scraping their skin or a bloody nose. But the smell makes it hurt a little less. She brightens up a little, knowing her next words were good ones. See, instead of drinking the blood, I only smell it, if I can help myself. So it makes me less evil. Kumiko's lips thin, but she remains silent. Everyone does. They gently wait for Himiko to continue. She ignores the swell in her heart at the lack of disgust in their expressions, the confusion and hope that floods her all at once. It was different this time. Instead of two drunkards, I saw her, I mean him, she says, gesturing to Izuku. Dabi questions, fixing his posture and paying closer attention to Himiko. I thought he was a girl, Himiko clarifies with a shrug. It was really dark, and Izuku has like super feminine eyes and was wearing a skirt. It's fine, I don't care. So please, on with it. Alright. Anyways, I came across you and that man with the rainbow beard. I immediately knew you were sober because you didn't smell like wet lemons and rotten eggs. I have a very sensitive sense of smell, but it's different from other people's. Like, to me, blood smells like roses, she explains, registering the confusion. Also, you were both steady when you fought. It was so fucking cool, she gushes, remembering the bridge and upper kick, the merciless stabbing and the wicked smirk. I didn't expect the knife, but it just made it all the more interesting. And when you stabbed him? She trails off, feeling the heat spread to her cheeks and thighs and lower stomach. She uses the hand not held in Kumiko's to pull up the hem of her dirty sweater, a bright, blooming smile stretching her cheeks and slitting her eyes. Oh, it was so much. So much. I was so hungry I couldn't even walk, and the puddle was sloshing. I couldn't help myself, I needed to drink it. To taste it. But it made my head spin so nicely. She feels saliva build in her mouth and swallows. It was so good. And then in an instant, the lust and bliss are swapped for guilt and disgust. She lets go of her sweater, of Kumiko's hand, floundering as she recites, I didn't mean to, I swear. I was just so hungry. I didn't mean to, I swear, I was just so hungry. So, to confirm, you drank it? Kumiko asks, clinical but warm. Himiko nods, feeling her eyes glaze over, gaze sliding to the bandages on her fingers. She picks at them, feeling more and more uncomfortable. Mummy would slap me for these. I'm so sorry. I felt so bad after. I sinned all over again, she wails, wiping her eyes aggressively. I sinned, but I swear I fixed it. I swear I repented. She looks up at them desperately, lips splitting into a wide, crazed smile. I repented, I promise. I did. I wasn't all bad. I expelled it all, I swear I did. Kumiko's look of cool, gentle professionalism melts away to one of muted anger. Himiko flinches and continues to swear, I expelled it. I repented it. I did it all the way I was taught. I even have proof. I did it. Izuku saw it. She turns to him with that same smile. Izuku looks taken aback, expression falling mute. Didn't you? Didn't you see it? Himiko. Kumiko draws her back. Himiko turns to hear, tears coming to a stop, expression far happier knowing her repent was a good thing. Could you explain to me? Your repent? Didn't Izuku tell you? I would like to hear it from you, Toga. No, call me Himiko again. Himiko insists, haphazardly taking off her bandages. Izuku moves to stop her and Kumiko holds up her hand, stopping him. Himiko continues, dropping them carelessly in her lap. Her knuckles have been cleaned and treated, but they're still raw and red. She still has her scars, proud scars that are proof of her goodness. So, see, this is what I did. This is the proof. She shows off her hands the way someone would show off an award. My mummy says these are like my rewards and records. They're a reminder of what to do if I ever sinned, and they're the trophies I wear to prove I am not a villain. Dabi curses under his breath. What's your quirk, crazy? He asks brusquely, jaw clenched. It's Himiko, not crazy, Himiko huffs, before answering, and my quirk is like transformation. I turn into people, even their clothes. But, I'm not allowed to use it really, because it only works if I drink their blood. Have you ever been taken to a quirk counselor? Quirk counselor? Himiko giggles, finding the idea preposterous. No. Mummy and Daddy can't tarnish their names like that. If I went to a quirk counselor, people would know they birthed a devil child. The fuck is wrong with your parents? Dabi swears, standing up and moving to the kitchen. He's, quite aggressively, brewing himself a cup of tea. Himiko gives him a funny look, only to note that Kumiko and Izuku look distasteful too. They're all angry, but not at her. They're angry at Mummy and Daddy? Kumiko sighs, standing up and walking over to her clipboard, scribbling a bunch of words. Fix her bandages, she orders Izuku, who does so without question. Himiko lets him, too confused to protest. Himiko, your lust for blood is a fundamental part of your quirk, Kumiko informs her, retaking her seat. Your body feeds off of blood, literally. It is a necessary part of your nutrition the way vitamin D is. I don't get it. You need to consume it to stay alive. But normal, good people don't crave it, Kumiko-sama. They don't dream of cutting people open to lick into their wounds. Himiko's cheeks heat up like a schoolgirl talking about her crush. They don't think about how pretty someone would look covered in blood. She looks up at Izuku, who's done with her bandages. People like you, Izuku. You looked so pretty just covered in all that blood. She licks her lips. A resounding slap sounded in the room. Himiko's head whipped to the side. It throbs. Never say those dirty, disgusting thoughts ever again, you demon. Mummy yells. Himiko cradles her cheeks, tears stinging her eyes. She's slapped again. If I ever hear you saying anything so nonsensical ever again, you will get far worse than a measly slap. She's slapped again. Do you understand? You say something like that, hit yourself until you bleed. Make sure you never even think like that ever again. She's slapped again. You truly are a devil reincarnate. Bad child. Bad Himiko. Bad child. Himiko scolds herself, slapping a hand over her mouth. I have to punish myself for saying that. She raises a free arm to slap herself when Izuku reaches over to grab her wrist. Himiko, do you have any plans to cut Izuku open? Kumiko asks. Himiko shakes her head. Unless you actively think about it, is the thought of draining any of our blood crossing your mind? Himiko shakes her head. Do you only feel that way when you're starving? Himiko nods. You're fine, dear. Even the most saint-like people go crazy when they're starved. Yes, you lust for blood, but so long as you feed and supply yourself regularly, you won't feel pressured to hurt anyone. So, don't punish yourself. But, no slapping yourself, Izuku demands. Himiko, a little frightened by his authoritative tone, nods feebly. Izuku gently lets go of her, sticking close and still a little weary. She eyes his thighs and the word hypocrite comes to mind. I'll take her, Izuku says to Kumiko after a passing silence. Dabi nods and Kumiko smiles, tight-lipped but genuine all the same. Take me where? I ran away from my mummy and daddy to not get beat. I don't want to be beaten again, she panics, confused and feeling betrayed. I thought they were good people? You're going to live with us, pipsqueak, Dabi clarifies, walking over with his cup of tea. It's still steaming when he takes a sip. Live with you? Yeah. I can live with you? She brightens, panic washed away. Your mood changes fast as lightning, goddamn. Himiko shrugs, happy. I want to live with you. Kumiko hums satisfactorily. Very well. I'll be putting her on a particular diet plan that incorporates what she needs. It'll be a bit more pay than usual, She directs the last part at Izuku, who shrugs indifferently. Pay? Himiko. Kumiko's eyes meet her solemnly. From what I understand, you have bulimia and anorexia nervosa. Sorry? You restrict your diet severely, and then whenever you do eat, which I'm going to assume is always some form of binging, you make yourself throw up. You do it with normal foods too, don't you? Though it's a question, she says it like a statement. Himiko nods. Mummy taught her. If you aren't hungry, that means you must have fed yourself. Mummy slaps her. Throw it up right now, Himiko. Himiko cries as she's bent over the toilet, fingers shoved into her throat. Her mother's nails are long. They scratch. It makes it hurt more. You always have to rectify your mistakes, my sweet Himiko. Stay hungry, don't become a monster, she orders over the sound of Himiko gagging. You hear me, sweet child? Repent. Repent or you're evil. Make sure you get rid of all the evil inside of you, throw it all up. It's a good thing. It's good. Himiko learned. Don't eat. Don't eat until you feel like you're dying. Until your body moves without your consent, and your stomach hurts not because of hunger but because it's so full. And take your fingers down your throat and rectify and repent. Kumiko makes it sound bad. Bad Himiko. But Daddy and Mummy told her she was supposed to do that. That it was supposed to hurt. You'll have to watch her after she eats. Make sure she takes what she can. Don't force feed her, but do not let her starve herself. It'll take a while until she can work her way up to normal portions for someone of her size. How old are you, Himiko? 16. I turned 17 in August. Have you started your menstrual cycle? My what? Your period. When you bleed from your vagina? Oh. She overheard her old classmates talk about that in middle school before, but they ran away when she tried to ask them about it. She shakes her head. I'll up the portions a little. She's underdeveloped and underweight. It doesn't surprise me that she's never had a period, seeing as quirks tend to manifest before the age of 4 and her parents might have been starving her since. She says the last part bitterly. No, they started when I was 10, I think. When I ate a bird, Himiko clarifies. She doesn't understand the bitterness. Her parents were trying to keep her from falling into depravity and losing herself to the evilness of her quirk. They were making sure she never strayed too far to repent and made sure she always repented. That doesn't make it better, crazy. Himiko pouts, folding her arms across her chest. Kumiko continues, she isn't allowed to go to the bathroom on her own 3 hours after any meal. It'll take a while to warm her up to drinking blood, so I'm going to attach a feeding tube. No blood. Himiko refuses, that makes me bad. I can't be bad. I can't repent all the time, it hurts a lot and it isn't easy. She whines, no blood. None at all. I thought you didn't want me to repent. You sounded mad when I told you I threw up. But if I'm fed blood, I'd have to do it all the time to keep from being bad. It doesn't make you bad, Dobby scoffs, and you're not repenting for jack shit either. You're going to keep it in your system, not on the floor. Himiko wants to protest again, but Dobby cuts her off. Think of it as a thank you to Izuku. He's paying for all of this. You're rich? Himiko tilts her head. But you look my age? Is it your family? Is your family rich? But you're dirty too. Rich families don't keep dirty children. Dobby coughs out a laugh. Harsh, tiny. Izuku presses his lips thinly. No, I have a job. Not safe, but it pays. Oh. The familiar slime of guilt crawls up Himiko's throat. She gags, swallowing the urge to throw up. Is this another mistake to rectify? A sin to repent for? Dobby's right, by the way. Izuku leans back on his heel, staring off to the side. If you feel bad, repay me by using the feeding tube. Himiko hiccups. They want me to drink blood? Don't they think it makes me decrepit? Satanic? Okay, she responds with a quiet smile. Repayment. Repayment makes her good. They make her good. Be patient with her, Kumiko threatens the two boys. Recovery is a long process. Tuya takes Himiko. She insists they call her by her first name, home without Izuku, who said it would be easier for him to handle the payment as soon as possible, seeing as he's attending school regularly now. She complains of the feeding tube and eyes the bags of blood with hunger and distress. Tuya makes a point to stand in front of it, trying to draw away her attention. Her mood bounces off the surface of the sidewalk, a stamp on her shoulder for the world. When they make it to Izuku's home, she squeals in delight at its size and cringes away from the overgrown roots. Tuya offers her Izuku's clothes and lays a raggedy blanket on the couch as she showers. Maybe I should ask Izuku about the TV? Or Wi-Fi? Internet cafes and libraries can only do so much. Done. Himiko swings open the bathroom door, skipping with her bloodied clothes in hand. What do I do with these? That bucket over there is a hamper, just toss it in. She skips around, and Tuya takes a minute to take in her appearance. She looks better, clean, her hair falling in wet, stringy strands around her face as opposed to lumped and matted with dirt and blood. She's still terribly gaunt, skin too pale and so, incredibly small. Tuya's always thought of himself as an average height, but Izuku and Himiko make him feel giant. When is Izuku going to get here? I never know, but soon, hopefully, Tuya answers, heading over to the kitchen. Do you think you'll be able to stomach something tonight, Tiny? I'm not that small. Himiko pouts. You're like 4 feet 11 inches. 5 feet 0 inches, she corrects smugly. Fine, 5 feet 0 inches. Now, think you can stomach some food? He's pouring himself cereal, cheap, bland and a little sugary. Not much, but after hearing some of the shit the little blonde girl had to go through, he isn't that hungry. She shrugs. I don't know. We can try, and if something happens, I'll just throw it. No throwing it up, Tuya cuts her off. You heard Miss Pretty in Purple, you have multiple tears in your throat and stomach, really bad scarring too. You're already sensitive to food from the years of starvation, throwing up and your quirk. Keeping it down on its own will be something you'll find difficulty with, never mind that fucked up mindset. She flinches at his words, and Tuya sighs. He isn't built for this. For comfort. Sorry, I'm not good with empathy or sympathy or words or whatever. He apologizes lamely, adding, but you need to eat Himiko. Without throwing up. Then can I try taking a few bites from your cereal? Just really small ones. Tuya nods, taking out 2 spoons and taking a seat on the couch, Himiko pressing herself against him as he eats. Hey, she says, watching as he takes another bite. What? Why does Izuku have so many scars? Tuya's spoon hovers in the air, mid-bite. She says it so casually, like her words are weightless. But you talk about the weather with an amiable smile. Himiko's eyes are cast down, lips thinned. He's quirkless, people don't like that. I mean, we both understand how fucked the system is, right? Imagine being at the bottom of the food chain. Himiko winces. His job doesn't help. You heard him, it isn't safe. I don't know what it is, he refuses to tell me, but sometimes he comes back seriously fucked. And then we kinda live in the slums of Mizudafu. His fight with the man with the glitter beard ain't his first. Okay. She fiddles with her bottom lip. Tuya offers a few bites of cereal, and Himiko swallows them with a sour look. Still, she swallows them. The silence tastes bitter. What about his other scars? The air feels thick. The proof of Izuku's sickness is written into his skin, paintbrushes of fine blades and fingers, drawing line after line after line. He is the mimic of a broken doll, with skin of paper shredded to nothing. All at his own doing, at the demand of his own misery. He knew she was bound to ask. After all, Tuya did too. He had to. Dry your hair properly, you fuck. Do you want to get a cold? Izuku's reply is as usual. Only idiots get colds. So is Tuya's following demand. Then get the fuck over here and give me the goddamn towel. Izuku does, paddling over, the sound of his footsteps lighter than that of the water, dripping down his curls and onto the floor. Tuya pulls off his zip-up and drapes it over Izuku's shoulders as the boy comfortably takes a seat on the floor between his legs. Tuya dries Izuku's hair gently, silence blanketing the room, occasionally broken by the unrest of their neighborhood. Tuya's been here for 3 months now, and he's falling into comfortable routines. Izuku's his roommate. He demands nothing but clean dishes and silence and has introduced Tuya to the local vendors, druggies and whores. Tuya does more, nonetheless. Not out of obligation, he'd been told he owed Izuku nothing and it's in his favor to not question it, but Concern. Concern, for when Izuku comes home from work, sporting injuries physicians would faint at the sight of. Concern, for when Izuku forgets to eat like sustenance was another chore he'd left at the end of his to-do list. Concern, for when Izuku leaves at 2 a.m. and comes back at 5, unharmed but with eyes so empty Tuya's fearful he's gone at the person he's greeting is a ghost. Concern, for the lines he keeps cutting into his thighs and forearms and hips. The ones Dabi chooses to dress as he bores his eyes into older wounds, self-inflicted and otherwise. Cuts so deep the blood stains the tile as it drips, and cuts so shallow they barely bleed. He mauls himself and Tuya's mouth dries at every new, stark wound. He once found a blade tucked in between a book, blood crusted along its edge. It was so flimsy, in his hands, something he could bend and break effortlessly. How could this thing be so destructive? If I burn it, will he stop? Can he? It's a better day, Tuya notes as his eyes trail to the band of Izuku's shorts, where the lines run up to the dip in his waist and down to above his knee. His arms are healing from his latest job, so the skin is free of anything fresh. Izuku! Tuya's heartbeat climbs and climbs until it's stuck in his throat. He coughs but it does not clear. Yeah. Tuya's hands skillfully wrap Izuku's hair in the towel, gently pulling it up. Why do you cut yourself? Izuku did not answer. Tuya puts down the spoon, lowering his head. Himiko's eyes stay on him, patient. I don't know, he admits, not masking his shame. I tried to ask once, but he shut down. Didn't answer. I don't know if he's punishing himself or if he needs to feel hurt or if it's a thing with seeing the scars or what. I don't know. Even quieter, he says, I don't know if I want to. You're there for him though, no? What a gentle question. There for him? How couldn't he be? Izuku gave him life. He showed him what it meant to abandon hopelessness and embrace a different beginning. He insulted his pride and called him pathetic for his anger, called him pitiful for loathing crying babies and a system he did nothing but aid and abide by. He gently combed his fingers through Tuya's hair and whispered an impossible fantasy that sounded like Cinderella's hell, reminding Tuya of the achievable and the impossible. He drew a stick figure with a wide smile on Tuya's lower calf after Tuya teased him about his manic smiles and received a far more delicate one when Tuya showed off the tattoo he made of it 2 days later. I try to be. I try my best and do whatever I can. He saved me just like he's trying to save you, Pipsqueak. The least I can do is be a shitty shoulder to lay his head on when he has a bad day, don't you think? Himiko smiles brightly, knocking further into Tuya's side. We'll be there for him together, she exclaims brightly. Tuya smiles, wrapping an arm around her and ruffling her hair. Together, crazy. Now let's try a few more bites. She dims. White hourglass. Izuku. Ah, it's so big. Himiko giggles, twirling around. She insisted she drop Izuku off, adamant about seeing Yui up close. Izuku didn't mind so long as Dabi tagged along. Still tragically underweight and malnourished, Himiko needs to be watched. Besides, despite her cheery demeanor, she's, understandably, still a little cautious around Izuku and Dabi, so the thought of running away might cross her mind too. Izuku's not too keen on leaving sick people for the dogs. Dabi, though uninclined, came, keeping to a beanie and glasses to keep a low profile. Izuku refrains from telling him that his hoodie does nothing to hide the tattoos on his neck and the scars on his face and that he'd draw attention regardless. Why are there so many people? Dabi mutters. Izuku shrugs on his blazer, gritting his teeth at the flashing cameras and many microphones being thrust into students' faces. Reporters. All Might is working for the heroics department. These vultures must have caught wind of it. I really wanted to drop you off at the gate. Himiko frowns, folding her arms across her chest with a pout. Next time, Himiko, Izuku promises, gently ruffling her hair. She liked it, apparently, and said it made her feel small but safe. Himiko, aware of Izuku's aversion to most touch after nearly losing a finger the night before, gently and obviously reaches for his shoulder, patting it with a triumphant smile. I'll hold you to it. Should have told her you'd do it for an extra meal. Izuku rolls his eyes at Dabi, dismissing the comment. He turns to scan the students still lingering by and spots Kaminari, meters away from the paparazzi. He's having a conversation with the redhead from the first day, Kirishima. Izuku's yet to be acquainted with anyone, having spent all of yesterday adjusting to high school and sticking with 1C. Unfortunately, as of today, Izuku is to spend every homeroom with 1A. Denki spots him in an instant, waving his arms like a windmill to catch Izuku's attention. Himiko giggles. Is that the blonde boyfriend? She asks Dabi. Izuku whips back around with a glare, poking his snickering housemate in the stomach. He isn't my boyfriend, shithead. Don't spread that BS. He then directs to Himiko, that's Denki. He's my friend. Not boyfriend. No, he groans, don't listen to Dabi. He burnt away most of his brain cells a few years ago. But, anyways, I have to go. I'll see you guys at home. And Himiko, do not skip your meals, alright? She nods dutifully. Satisfied, Izuku bids them goodbye. Bye, Izuku-kun. Later, dollface. When Izuku swings around, he finds Denki is already jogging over, Kirishima at his left. Hey, Aizu. Denki slings an arm over Izuku's shoulders. Izuku's grown accustomed to Kaminari's touch and has even come to expect it. It's that comfortable familiarity that keeps him from flinching. Hi. He wraps his arm around Denki's waist, before turning to Kirishima, who's staring at them with his eyebrows drawn in questioning. Hello. Kirishima looks away from his arm to his face and grins toothily. His teeth are gnarly. Hi, man. Sorry for the shitty impression on the first day. What Mina said was kinda out of line. She should apologize to Shinso. Yeah. Kirishima's smile turns nervous. Denki, Izuku's savior when it comes to stilted conversation, butts in. Who was that? He asks, nodding to where Himiko was. She and Dabi have already turned the corner and are out of sight. My roommates? I only recognize Dabi. What about the tiny one? You have roommates? I met Himiko yesterday, Izuku explains bluntly, and then to Kirishima, yeah. We live together. We should probably get through if we want to head to class. Denki cuts Kirishima off, giving him a look that Izuku felt too tired to make sense of, but they've been here all morning. Denki buries his face into his palms. While Kiri and I were waiting for you, we were kinda hoping they'd just fuck off or something. Just ignore them. Izuku holds out his hand and intertwines his fingers with Denki, who smiles at the motion. It's almost romantic. Kirishima hiccups at the gesture, his cheeks coloring a gentle rose. Izuku, however, only sees Denki. He feels the way his fingers twitch and knows he needs something to ground him. He offers to be an anchor, insulation to keep Denki from sparking out in a crowd of unknown faces, to keep him from losing himself in an abundance of unknown voices. The feeling of people brushing against him every which way keeps Izuku's heart in his throat and his posture tense. In a breath, Izuku's fingers squeeze Denki's and the role of anchor dances between them. You three. Are you students of All Might? A lady in a smart coat and slicked-back ponytail shoves her microphone in Denki's face. It takes all of Izuku's dwindling patience not to flip her over and slit her wrist. How are his classes? Does he teach you well? Denki starts to shake as his grip on Izuku's hand tightens. Kirishima notices it too, hurrying to calm the reporters whilst knocking them away. The grip on Izuku's hand tightens and tightens like claws are trying to dig their way to his bone. Izuku's free hand twitches to reach for his switchblade too many times to count. Still, the reporters have made no move to fucking leave them be. Someone's microphone grazes the skin of Izuku's lip. He snaps. Everyone move the ever-loving fuck away before I shove your mics so far up your asses you'll taste the fucking foam for weeks. It's a poor choice of wording, but it's startling and does the job. The people so adamant about assaulting them finally fucking step back. Denki's hold on Izuku's hand eases. Izuku pulls Denki through, Kirishima at their backs. Aizawa is seen walking past the school doors and to the gates. All Might is off duty, he tells the unwanted horde of monkeys, and you're interfering with the students? Please vacate the premises instantly. A reporter chooses to heed the warning and steps forward anyway, only for a large, metal gate to slam down, effectively putting a barrier between Yui and the outside. Are you okay, Denki? Izuku asks. Denki's answer is a strained smile, his eyes pinched. Izuku gently squeezes his hand the way Dabi does for him when his injuries are too painful. Denki squeezes back. Walk him to class. Izuku tells Kirishima, I'm going to head to mine, but I'll be there during homeroom. Kirishima nods, gently taking Denki by the shoulders and holding him close. Izuku decides right then that he likes Kirishima. Shota orders Bakugo to the side just before homeroom starts. Since Shota's class follows homeroom, Midoriya will be spending both their homeroom and first period going over the footage he'd received of their battle trials the previous day during their heroics class. Shota's still seething over it. He'd never given Yagi clearance for the battle trial. It was a stupid choice for a first-day activity and hurt the students. Yagi's argument of it being useful to gouge out how skilled they were was weak in the face of its cons, and there were hundreds of other much safer ways to do so that wouldn't endanger the students or hurt their pride. Fucking moron. Counting to 5, Shota reorients his thinking to the matter at hand. He'd put this off since Midoriya hadn't been in any of their classes yesterday, but there was a clear history between the two. Bakugo looked at Midoriya with something more akin to fear and betrayal. As opposed to an old friend or enemy, it was almost as if Midoriya was his very own poltergeist come to life. Midoriya looked at Bakugo like his very presence could promise eternal misery, with the sort of vacancy and familiarity that spelt a pretense for Bakugo's actions, like he was predisposed to the violence and outwardly rage. Shota didn't think he'd seen someone completely disengaged and dissociate from a scenario so quickly and obviously before. Wherever they knew each other was an apocalypse of crimson rain and black clouds. A past that they'll forever be immersed in no matter how old they grow, so long as they refuse to trim the growing weeds. Yes? Bakugo raises an eyebrow, perfectly arched. That's another thing Shota noticed. Bakugo's clean, trimmed hair and nails and white teeth. But his tie is loose and his shirt is untucked and his pants sag. Everything unkempt about him is temporary. I'm here to talk about Midoriya. The reaction is instant. Bakugo's posture straightens and his hands clench into his fists at his side. His jaw tightens and his eyes narrow. What about him? You knew him. Shota's tone is firm and confident. He doesn't let Bakugo interrupt before continuing. The relationships my students have with each other, past or current, are none of my business so long as it doesn't interfere with their school. So long as it doesn't hurt them. Something irrecoverably vulnerable paints Bakugo's features mellow. Where did you even find him, sensei? Find him? What do you mean? The look is gone. It's nothing, he scowls. So long as he doesn't get in my way, I don't care. We went to elementary school together, that's it. It isn't. It's not even the first week, and Shota already feels like he's roaming aimlessly in search of answers to questions he doesn't have. There's so much he doesn't understand. He'll have to look into this further later on then. Very well. Please, remember my threat concerning attacking students unprovoked. Midoriya will be coming along to today's lesson and all my classes, including homeroom, here on after. I will not have a repeat of the first day. Sensei, you're dismissed. Where did you find him? He left. He became untraceable and unknown in the blink of an eye. Nothing more than an eviction notice on his apartment door, and the angry hollering of Mitsuki as she demanded the deities to give her an answer. The Midoriyas hadn't been over in years. They only stopped by because his mother had heard gossip that Inko hadn't been to work in months. Katsuki remembers her tears. He remembers his wrist stinging as he read the sign over and over again. Remembers his mother slapping his hand. He remembers glaring at the fresh cuff marks on their way home. He was gone. Deku was gone. Where did you find him? How'd you bring him back to life? Izuku. Firstly, I'm going to have Midoriya come by and critique your performances during the battle trials yesterday. Aizawa nods to Izuku, who walks up with a stack of papers, his hair sitting on his head in a disaster of a bun, courtesy of Himiko. You did well. Izuku addresses them wholly after handing them their evaluation sheets. I want to especially point to Yaoyorozu and Ida, who showed to be the best strategists among all of you. They were quick on their feet and utilized what little they knew of their opponents to create a plan that would give them the best chance of winning. Yaoyorozu and Ida blush at the compliment. the former shielding her eyes when students turn to stare at her appreciatively while the latter bows in thanks. However, I also want to point to the powerhouses in this class. In this case, Todoroki, Katsuki, and Denki. He regards them calculatingly. I wrote it on your sheets, but Katsuki's far too instinctual in his approach. Even as a villain, something as dangerous as breaking down the infrastructure to get to your opponents with a nuclear weapon being held in the building would, in any other situation, lead to more than your death only. This wasn't a replica of a suicide bombing. Similarly, Todoroki, what you did was quick, but stupid. He ignores the mild look sent to him by the ice and fire wielder. Certain explosives react to even the slightest change in temperature. Be aware of that and your teammate next time you want to ice over an entire building holding a nuclear bomb. Shoji wasn't there as an accessory, even if the display was rather beautiful. Finally, Denki. Izuku flattens his lips in a straight line, and Denki sheepishly rubs the back of his neck despite Izuku not saying anything. Your quirk, perhaps aside from Tokoyami's, holds some of the strongest raw power here. Your complete lack of control is jeopardizing both you and those around you. I'm going to have you meet with Aizawa later on to complete an entire training regime that focuses solely on your quirk, while the rest of the students hone themselves. Denki looks down, ashamed. Izuku doesn't like it. He sighs, I'm done. Detailed evals are with Aizawa. Come pick them up after class. Midoriya, you can head back. Aizawa gestures for him to take a seat, and Izuku chooses to crouch by Denki's desk, blatantly ignoring the scathing look sent his way by the black-haired man. Now, we need to pick a class president. You have until the end of homeroom. Please do not disturb me until you've come to a decision. As he worms his way back into his sleeping bag, Izuku turns to Denki, who's already looking at him. The class erupts in yells of choose me and I'll do it, but Izuku keeps his eyes on Denki, whose lips are curled in a slight frown. You're not stupid, Izuku says, but you are behind, and you need to fix that. Your quirk is dangerous, and it hurts you. It does not. Denki starts, but Izuku cuts him off by standing up and flipping over his arms, pulling up the sleeves of his uniform and showing off the Lichtenberg scars running along his skin. It hurts you. All quirks have drawbacks, and the stronger the quirk, the worse the drawback. Because your quirk is strong and dangerous, it was probably difficult to practice with. You're not less for needing these lessons. I'm going to recommend Tokoyami do the same. Yeah. Denki smiles. Thanks, Aizu. For what? Before Kaminari can answer, Ida stops right in front of them, handing them a single piece of paper. Write the name of who you think would be best for class president. No voting for yourself, of course, he orders, before walking off to the next person. Who should I put? Izuku shrugs. He thinks Yaoyorozu would be the best choice. Hitoshi. Hitoshi decides having a friend is weird. Or maybe it's the friend that's weird. Because Izuku Midoriya really is one weird person. Not only is he Hitoshi's friend by choice, he's just generally rather odd. He speaks a lot, but it's in short tones and short vowels, word vomit followed by long periods of damning silence that Hitoshi doesn't know what to make of. When Hitoshi is around too many people, his tongue glued to the roof of his mouth and the fear of swallowing poison making it hard to breathe, Midoriya doesn't grow frustrated or question it. He lets Hitoshi be, mulling in the silence with him or filling it up with words of his own until Hitoshi can find his voice and try again. He's considerate and dense. Not in a way that was unobservant or ignorant, but in his perception of complexity. He's quick with his words, dripping with sarcasm and edge, sounding like the epitome of teenage angst, but he rarely hints at anything. He's blunt, doesn't care for puzzles and metaphorical anecdotes. Not for lack of intelligence, but for the safety of definite understanding. He's everything Hitoshi believed futile. It's only been 3 days, but Hitoshi considers him a friend. So, when Midoriya asks him if he's alright sitting in the cafeteria, he says yes, trusting that Midoriya will help him if it becomes too much. It's naive, but Hitoshi has always been spineless when faced with kindness. Kaminari, the one person Midoriya seems to be fond of in one, saves them a seat with his friends, this time only the redhead and the one with the mullet. Suro they slash them. Kirishima he slash him, and you know Denki, Midoriya whispers just before they approach the table. So you guys are back. Shiro waves at them as they take a seat. Still no food? Still not hungry? Midoriya leans on his elbows. And neither is Shin. Right? Hitoshi nods. He can't bring himself to speak. It's hard and it hurts, right now. That's fine, you guys are eating when you get home, right? Kirishima questions, politely. Hitoshi nods. His dads agreed that if Hitoshi couldn't bring himself to eat at school, and they'd know, he'd have to eat at home. To stay healthy and nourished and all that. Midoriya doesn't respond. Kaminari sends him a scathing look. You are eating when you get home, right? His tone is threatening. Midoriya looks away, feigning nonchalance. Izuku. Midoriya huffs. I have a new roommate, there are some things I have to prioritize. A new roommate? Eating isn't a priority? Kaminari raises his eyebrows incredulously. Me eating isn't a priority, Midoriya clarifies. My roommate needs help, he words vaguely. It's taken a lot out of my pocket. I offered her a stay, so I can't just not provide. He says it all casually, like it is normal to starve yourself for the sake of a roommate you take care of at 15. Hitoshi wants to say something, but he can't speak with the weight in his throat. Luckily, other people say it for him. Don't your parents provide? Shiro raises an eyebrow. Not eating isn't healthy. I have dinner. Not eating regular meals isn't healthy, Shiro restates bluntly. Eat some of my food, Kaminari insists, shoving his plate of bento at Midoriya. No. Eat some of my food or so God helps me I will tell Dabi. Hitoshi wonders who that is. Midoriya glares at him, but relents, taking the chopsticks and taking small bites. Kaminari nods, satisfied and reaches over for an extra pair of chopsticks to share. Well, Hitoshi supposes it doesn't matter much if Midoriya's weird. He's a good person who befriends good people. Hitoshi's eyes linger on Kaminari's satisfied grin. Q2. Izuku. The blaring of the alarm is sudden and frightening. Security level 3 has been breached. Sirens. Students, please promptly evacuate. Izuku's fight or flight kicks in. Quick on his feet, he grabs the two people nearest to him, Denki and Shinso, and drags them out of the cafeteria. He doesn't follow the evacuation procedure, the sound of the alarm paralyzing his sense of reason. He thinks Denki is saying something. He doesn't know. The students are far too rowdy for a school composed of the best, and Izuku shoves them out of the way harshly, stepping on their toes and elbowing their sides. The other door leads to the halls. There are a few wandering students all headed to the emergency exits, frightened. Izuku wonders how he must look, dragging his only friends by their wrists in the wrong direction. He finds a desolate space near the stairwell, facing a large window, and tucks himself into the corner. He pulls Denki and Shinso on either side of him, letting go of their hands to tuck his face in between his knees. For a moment, the ringing was of the shrill sound of an ambulance, the feeling of his mother's wrist, cold in his hands, the smell of antiseptic, blood, alcohol and loss. It's the intruder alarm, Denki says, scooting closer and fully pressing himself against Izuku. He's shaking too. It's probably nothing. Shinso gets up. Izuku's arm latches onto his shirt, much to his embarrassment. Sorry, he apologizes, letting go. Shinso shakes his head reassuringly and points at the window. It's J. he says quietly, moving to sit back down. Should be over soon. Loud noises startle me, Denki says, wrapping an arm around Izuku, fingers gently skimming Shinso's shoulder. Shinso responds to the light graze by shuffling closer, pressing against Izuku. Denki's fingers reach over to curl into the fabric of his blazer, and together they stay huddled as they calm down. Izuku relishes their touch. In the way they're warm when his mother wasn't, the way he can rest his palm against their chest and hear the beat of their heart because they're alive and breathing and there. They don't move for a few minutes, as the chaos dies down and Ida's distinctive voice instructs people back to their tables and classrooms echoes down the hallway, telling the students that it's the press and paparazzi, the teachers coming to his aid. Izuku, Denki and Shinso remain pressed against each other, holding each other like they've been friends for eternities. Izuku knows it's odd to like them this much. to latch onto their safety and comfort knowing how cruel people are. How quick they can be to hurt you. He knows they've barely known each other, that Denki and Shinso have only officially met today. It doesn't matter, doesn't really cross his mind. He likes them. That's enough. He likes them enough to kill them if they'd ask, to stay alive for them if they begged. It's fucked, it's too fast, it should be wrong. Izuku doesn't think so, though. Like this, right now, he doesn't think he's ever felt quite safe. Aizawa's office desk is dull in comparison to the others in the lounge. Plain gray with a single, purple cat plush attached to the pencil holder and a steaming cup of coffee in a bright yellow mug. Izuku finds it fitting. Hello, Aizawa, he greets politely, eyes roaming around the teacher's lounge. Present Mike is there too. Izuku returns his thumbs up with a nod. Hello. Aizawa looks through a stack of papers, pulling out and handing Izuku a note. I was meant to give this to you during lunch, before the press thing. That was so not cool. Present Mike makes an over-exaggerated frown. Totes messed up the vibes. Whoever destroyed the gate was so out of whack. You sound like a wannabe rapper from the late 20th century. God help my ears and sanity. Aizawa sighs, looking seconds away from banging his head against the wall. He tells Present Mike, don't talk like that. He looks back to Izuku, who's folding the paper and slipping it into the pocket of his backpack. That's a permission slip for a school trip at the end of the week with 1A. You're required to go as Nizu's representative. It'll be a good way to get a better read on their quirks and how they work in rescue situations. Just have your father sign it. Alright. Is that all? Aizawa hesitates, before decidedly asking. Why are your arms always covered in bandages? Izuku stares at his arms. He'd taken off his blazer as the day grew to a close and it became a little too hot. On full display, his bandages look tattered and worn. He'd need to replace them soon. I have scars and I'm not comfortable putting them on display, he says. People weren't all that kind to me as a kid, Aizawa. You've seen my face? He gestures to it lazily. It's a half-truth. People are mean, they do scar him. He has lightning bolts that match Denki's on his right arm, scrapes on his biceps, and burns on his shoulders. But he doesn't treat himself kindly either. Those are the scars he hides. Aizawa's skeptical, but asks no more questions, nodding and waving Izuku off. Remember, the permission slip by tomorrow, please. Alright. Will an electronic signature work? My father's on a business trip. An electronic signature is fine. Aizawa looks at the door. You're dismissed. Izuku doesn't give him a farewell in reply, walking off in lazy strides. He wonders, for a second, how Aizawa would react to his kindness. Probably poorly. Shota sighs when Midoriya leaves the room. Think he was lying about the bandages? Hisashi asks, moving over to give his shoulders a squeeze. I don't know. Shota rolls his neck. I can't tell with him. He reminds me of Hitoshi when he first moved in, but colder. More stoic, detached. We'll keep an eye out for him. Shota nods, more to himself, thoughts preoccupied. Something about Izuku is unnerving and unclear. It wields an intense feeling of something Shota's yet to place. He'll be life-altering. If only Shota knew if it'd be as a villain or a hero.